and welcome to episode 14 of Tomorrow's World Audit Time. Happy New Year, Mark.
Happy New Year, Russ.
Oh, you're sounding very crisp. That's a lovely deep timbre to your voice there, Mark.
Thank you, Russ. I've come over a dreadful 10-month cold.
I thought it might be the something to do with the presents that Father Christmas brought us for Christmas. These lovely new futuristic things they call microphones that all the kids are using these days.
I know. Look at us all professional and ting.
Yeah, so I hope this sounds better to you at home rather than us balancing our mobile phones on oven gloves and
Christmas jumpers in my case, big woolly jumpers. Yeah,
yeah. So
can't be worse, can it?
No, it can't be. No, what I was having to do before is ensconce myself in a sort of like a child's fort of duvets and cushions to try and shield my phone from noises. I've not bothered doing that this week, so hopefully this new magic microphone will get rid of all those noises automatically. But we'll soon find out, won't we?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, last year we did 12 episodes plus a Christmas special. So basically that was one per month. So although I know if you look, we didn't really release one last January, it is kind of the year anniversary of us starting. So what better thing to do than go all the way back to the beginning? And obviously our first episode, we did the Tomorrow's World nearest my birthday. So this year we're starting with the Tomorrow's World nearest your birthday. In fact, on your birthday.
Yes.
The very day you were born.
I know.
No mention of your birth, though, funnily.
Well, that wasn't really tomorrow's world. That was today's world, wasn't it?
That's true, yeah. I shouldn't be treating it as a competition, Mark. But spoiler alert to the listeners, you have comprehensively thrashed me here because your episode is so much better than the episode from the day before I was born. It's ridiculous. It's basically the same crew presenting, but it's just so much more interesting and fun, isn't it?
It is, but then, I mean, point counterpoint. I think we're not for how dour and depressing the episode we watched for your birthday was. I'm not even sure we'd be on episode 14. I think there was something incredibly inspirational about just how bleak that show was, that kind of made us realize that there might be something in this concept. Whereas now, like, obviously this is a really decent, normal episode. Actually, it's quite good. Like, there's a lot of good stuff in this, and there's a lot of curiosities that we could definitely get our teeth into. But I there's a special place in my heart for that first episode, Russ.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of callbacks in this episode, I think.
Or call forwards.
Yes, call forwards. Yeah. Yes, yeah. Well, actually, we're playing with time, aren't we?
I know. You are right, though. I do win.
I could. There wasn't actually much happened apart from you being born, Mark. Not a lot happened on this day. I looked into it. I did find out that currently, right now, you have been alive for 361,613 hours.
Oh wow! Okay, crikey.
Yeah. I used hours calculator to find that out. But I found some famous people born on the same day as you, Mark. I don't know. Have you ever looked into this? I'm sure you have.
I know a few. Yeah, there's a couple that spring to mind.
It's a veritable who's who of
Beatles and prime ministers pop into my head.
Yes, yeah. So going back in time. So we've got from youngest to oldest. You've got Bella Hadid, the model. Then Brandon Routh, the Superman actor. Chris O'Dowd, actor.
That's right, yeah.
Sean Lennon, son of John. Steve McQueen, the director. PJ Harvey. Your mate David Cameron. Guillermo del Toro.
That's right, yeah.
Steve Ovett.
I don't think I knew Steve Ovett.
Quantum Leap star Scott Bakula. Never played Dracula, is he? Scott Bakula.
No, he hasn't. No.
Seems like something he's
missed opportunity.
Yeah. Monk star Tony Shalhoub. Sharon Osbourne. Rodney Templeton, the bloke who wrote all of Michael Jackson's Thriller album. Jackson Brown. John Entwistle from The Who. John Lennon.
Father of Sean.
Journalist John Pilger. Brian Blessed. The Duke of Kent. Sherry Blair's dad, Tony Booth. And Donald Sinden and Alastair Sim.
That's a pretty good.
It's a good selection you got there, isn't it?
That's a good hand, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That's a real spectrum.
Yeah, as far as I know, all I've got is Rutger Hauer and the bloke who played MacGyver on my birthday. So once again, you've beaten me.
Oh, I don't know. Rutger Hauer and John Michael Vincent. Vincent. That's
it. That's the Airwolf guy.
Oh,
MacGyver is
MacGyver.
Richard Dean Anderson.
Oh, Richard Dean Anderson. I knew it was a double. Yeah. That's not bad, but maybe it's not quite as it's not quite the panoply of stars that I have available to me.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, you got anything else to say about
About my birthday.
about the day of your birth?
Except that I don't remember it.
How much did you weigh?
7'8", 7'9", something like 7'10" maybe. Yeah. I have it to hand somewhere. I didn't look. Do you know what? I didn't look it up. Equally, I was thinking about calling my mum and saying, "Mum, did you happen to watch Tomorrow's World on the day I was born?" And I thought that was a stupid question, so I didn't ask it, because obviously the answer is yes, she did. She definitely watched it, but I'm sure she doesn't remember it.
Oh, okay. Well, should we fire up the old
Let's do it.
TV? Well, once again, Mark, have we started to exhaust our title sequences, haven't we? Because once again, that's another one that we've had in the past.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, same theme tune, exactly the same animation and images as we've previously had. And obviously this era, no introduction either, just thrown straight into the action.
Absolutely. Straight into Sue. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of is, like, obviously, to be fair, this is the same as the episode from your birthday, which is only, 2 and a bit months later. So it's not that shocking that it would be the same. But it is also the same as another episode from 1984. So it's like they just must not have bothered refreshing, which is something that they do before and after. I don't know what that is. I'm not positing ideas.
That giant brain cost an absolute fortune to build, and they really want to get their money's worth out of it.
Well, you think they amortise the cost over every episode of Tomorrow's World?
Yeah, I do.
That's absolutely how BBC budgets work back then, isn't it?
Well, should we just get straight on to the next section then?
Bring it on, big guy.
We'll have this finished in about half an hour, Mark.
First tonight, 1 vacuum flask. I don't think there's much hope for that one. It's leaking all over the place. It's rather a good thing there's no dangerous chemicals. Even so, I don't fancy. Whoops. Drinking crunchy coffee. Open the right end at long last. Well, it's not really surprising that a flask breaks so easily, because inside it's only made of 2 thin glass envelopes, one inside each other, which are sealed together at the neck, and then the air in between is removed, leaving a vacuum. And silvering helps with the insulation. Because of the vacuum, you'd only need one tiny shock, and the delicate structure implodes, as we've just seen. But now look at this design. The glass inside has been replaced with metal. And here is some special stainless steel, and the outer bit is mild stainless steel. Because a metal container can affect the taste of your drink, before they suck the air out through here, the hole at the bottom, to make the vacuum, the cavity is filled with carbon. And then the whole flask is heated to 350 degrees centigrade over a period of 4 hours. That process activates the carbon, which absorbs all the impurities that would normally affect the taste of your drink. But is the end product as indestructible as the manufacturers claim? Let's do a scientific test. Hot coffee in both flasks, securely fastened, and then both flasks in our test equipment, and see how they get on.
Well, Mark, I don't know about you, but I got a sudden Proustian flashback here. The mere sound of Su Ingle's voice. This is the first time we've seen her since the first episode.
Yes.
And she has quite a distinctive voice.
Yes.
And it just conjured up images of gristle and meat being fed through meat processing plants in my mind.
Processed frozen steaks.
Because I had to listen to that piece of VT so many times over when I was editing it before, first time round. Wasn't as good at editing at the time. Yeah, so that's all I could think of when I could hear her voice. I mean, I don't have any more information about Su Ingle, but we noticed that, but once again in this, she is called a reporter rather than a presenter.
In the closing credits, yeah.
In the closing credits. And do you have any, apart from being a sexist, bit of casual sexism for the BBC, do you think there's any reason why that is? Because she's not reporting, she's in the studio. Yeah,
once again, and actually I at one point I thought this might have been like, oh, maybe we just stumbled across the entire time she'd been in the studio. And then you reminded me that no, in fact, she was in the studio in the first episode that we talked about from your birthday, talking about cardboard boxes and how they were a way of transporting liquid, or special reinforced cardboard boxes. So twice in 3 months she's been this. I do not understand why she's not down as a presenter, and even she's just not even remembered as a presenter. I don't know. The only thing I could posit was that it was some kind of union thing. Maybe there was only a certain number of presenters allowed on a show, or
or maybe something to do with BBC pay grades, maybe.
That I guarantee she was not paid the same amount as the others. There's no two ways about it. So it might be a budget thing, but why she would accept that, I don't know, because she's quite clearly. I mean, she starts the program. You tune on, and there she is. There's Su Ingle presenting, broadcasting live. So obviously it's some kind of finance swizz. I think there's no two ways about it. How it works or doesn't, I don't know. But yeah, it's really odd because, actually, now that we've seen her twice, she's decent. She's really good. But she's just not remembered, is she? The other people who present, quote unquote, the program are all fondly remembered. And Su Ingle seems to have been, she's not lost to time like some of the people we've seen in this program, but she's definitely not remembered in the same way. So it's curious.
No. And I mean, she deserves danger money because she's doing what is clearly the most dangerous experiment of the programme.
Yeah.
With notoriously explosive thermos flasks. Well, implosive, in fact. Yeah, something which I remember always being warned away from thermos flasks as a child. Like, it'll implode. In the same way that, I was always told not to smash
throw a brick at a TV.
Yeah, not throw a brick at a TV or cut open a golf ball. Because obviously the centre of a golf ball was deadly poisonous and a TV would explode and electrocute you.
See, I don't remember that one, but I do remember the CRT screens were incredibly dangerous. In order to have the screen smashed, you had to hide them in bins.
Yeah, and I always felt like the thermos flask was like a miniature drinkable version of that. It's just quite fun. I'm slightly confused by it, but it's quite fun that she, first of all, just bins this thermos flask onto the floor, smashes it immediately, thus demonstrating how fragile they are. I mean, how they even got the market as a product, being that fragile, I don't know. And then shows us the new one that's made of stainless steel, unbreakable, and then just bins them into a cement mixer. Brilliantly. And we get to see, the stainless steel one remains intact, unsurprisingly. What with it not being full of glass. Yeah, look, pretty good demonstration, I thought.
Yeah, but the thing is, unlike you, I don't quite remember thermos flasks being I don't recall as a child that drinking from a thermos flask was like a high wire act. That somehow you were constantly taking a gamble with, if not death, then just a mouthful of bloody glass shards. I don't remember that at all. So this was it's just the really casual way she talked about it was to me, I knew how they were structured, so obviously it made perfect sense. But then the fact that apparently just a mere drop to the floor will be enough to smash the innards, as you say, ensure that they implode. Was quite. I can't believe they lasted as long as they did, to be honest.
Yeah. But can you always picture blokes on building sites carrying thermoses for the tea or whatever? Yeah. I'm sure it lasts about 5 minutes on a building site.
Yeah, or they just like drinking glass. But no, it's a great experiment. Yeah, because the reveal of the cement mixer for me was a real joy. She just kind of she steps to the right, and there it is revealed as like, you know exactly what's going to happen. And actually, for added bonus, there it's full of kind of chunks of cement as well. So it's not just turning with. It's like they really want things to get effed up, and just the way she throws them in, with real kind of real passion, and turns it around. So obviously, we took a box real early in this show. Absolutely, is there a presenter talking over loud machinery? Though interestingly, this is the first time we've seen it where they knew that she was going to be talking over loud machinery. Yes. And for the first time they try and rectify it. It was only when we were just watching it now and it wasn't even that I saw her pick it up. I recognized the sound because I'm using proper headphones. She uses a football or sports commentator microphone, the one like John Motson used, which kind of has a special kind of front bit that kind of acts as like a kind of a little funnel around the mouth. And she then she's commentating on her own experiment, which is clearly they knew exactly, maybe they cottoned on, but somehow they managed to forget that, presenters shouldn't really be trying to talk over loud machinery. So that was fun. But then she takes them out and she rattles round the old flask, and you can hear the rattle, you can hear the shake of the glass inside. But frustratingly, and despite the fact that she has what looks like a kind of a 2-foot diameter kind of low-level kind of glass dish in front of her, she doesn't pour it out.
No.
Which I found very disappointing.
Yeah.
To evidence the fact that, once again, I mean, I know we've already seen that the deal is a smash, but to evidence the fact that, you know, it has happened again, she doesn't pour it out. What she does do, though, is pour out the contents of this newfangled flask into a kind of a hilarious see-through jug, kind of, you know, a laboratory jug, which she then sips her coffee from, which I thought was quite nice. And she goes back for seconds. She never says anything.
But doesn't say anything. Doesn't,
No, it
I was
doesn't.
expected to go like,
glass free.
Yeah.
She doesn't. She just we just
it
move on.
hangs there.
yeah. Now we're just watching her drink coffee.
Yeah, I bet it was really cold coffee as well. There was one bit. So the bit I found confusing in this, though. The principle of a vacuum flask is that there's two layers with a vacuum in between them, and because it's a vacuum, the heat can't get out through conduction or convection, and then it's got a shiny layer that stops the radiation. So the three ways of heat escaping can't happen, right? But then she shows us the new one, which is made of stainless steel, which relies on the same principle, but for some reason they've got a layer of carbon between the two layers rather than just having a vacuum. And this is a bit I didn't understand, because she says it gets rid of the bad flavour of the metal, but the liquid didn't touch the carbon.
No,
because the carbon's between the two layers of metal.
Yes.
So how's that? I mean, what's going on there? I didn't understand that bit at all.
No, it's one of those things where, especially the first time you watch it, like, it all kind of just passes over you, saying, "Oh yeah, okay." So they fill in the vacuum with carbon, blah blah blah. And it was only when you watch it for the second time that you realise that she's somehow implying that it's to improve the taste. And of course, the liquid doesn't go anywhere near.
No, because we see in the previous episode that activated charcoal is good for purifying things.
Yes.
So I'd understand if that charcoal was like, I don't know, in the top or something. Was like a filter in the lid.
It was a mesh, and it filtered. Yeah, absolutely.
But that definitely isn't what she was showing us.
No,
she had this nice
no.
cross-section.
Yeah.
And that's not what she showed us at all.
No, it's like extra insulation. It's like they filled in the cavity with insulation. I don't know. It's like somebody's explained it to the staff at Tomorrow's World, and they've got the wrong end of the stick, and then they've let Sue. They've then explained it's Chinese whispers, isn't it? It's like it's nonsense. Also, the other thing is like, well, if you fill in I don't know, maybe you're more of a scientist than I. If you fill in a vacuum with
it's
stuff,
no longer a vacuum.
It's not a vacuum anymore, is it?
No.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I'm glad I'm not wrong in that, Russ. I was confused.
Yeah. However they do work, they are a thing. I mean, they have become very popular. So I'll give you a little history of the vacuum flask. So there was a Scottish physicist called James Dewar in 1892. He invented it because he was doing some experiments on palladium, the element, not the venue. He needed to keep the temperature stable, and he thought up this idea of inventing this flask he could put it in, and it would keep the temperature stable for his experiments. So it's actually called, in scientific circles, it's called a Dewar flask in recognition of this. But because he was a scientist and he thought all scientists should be able to use this, he didn't patent it at all. And then, predictably, a couple of cheeky German glassblowers come along called, Reinhold Berger and Albert Aschenbrenner in 1904. And they thought, hang on a minute, we could use one of these Dewar flasks to store coffee and tea in, or whatever. So they're the ones, they created the first ever thermos flask. Obviously, immediately claimed the rights to the design, thus buggering poor old Dewar's plans up. So Dewar tried to sue them and lost. So basically gave his invention away to somebody else who made a big profit from it. But yeah, the thermos flask became so popular that it's one of those things that is now no longer a copyrightable term. It's like, I don't know, Hoover or sellotape or tannoy. Yeah. Those sort of things where they're so ubiquitous that, anybody can now make a thermos flask, even though there is actually a thermos company. But yeah, they're really good. I mean, but these days, there's basically three, you can still get glass ones, unbelievably. Thermos still make glass ones because there's lots of like hipster purists who claim that the glass ones are the only ones that like everything keeps the taste properly. Because obviously you store something in glass, it won't ever get any of the taste of the metal. And they go, I get that. Yeah, they go like the steel ones, you get the taste of the steel on there. Even though I drink out of this stainless steel mug all the time, and I never notice any any problems with it.
No.
But there you go. But you can also, obviously these days, you get aluminium ones, which is, all the fancy bottles that everyone's carrying around these days.
Yeah, I got one myself.
They're basic. Yes, yeah, exactly. Like now people don't use plastic anymore. They tend to be all made of aluminum, and they work on the same principle as well. They usually have a vacuum in them. Obviously, you get mugs as well that do it. But the problem with the aluminium ones is they're only really good for things like water, because aluminium's a more reactive metal. So if you put something acidic in it, like a pint of lemon juice, maybe take a pint of lemon juice on a picnic, it's going to react with your aluminium. So that's why you also need the stainless steel ones, because it won't react with the stainless steel one. But yeah, and obviously other uses, like I said, they use them in science and stuff like that, because you could use like cryogenics. They use them a lot for storing all their liquid nitrogen and things. NASA, big users of them to store all of their rocket fuel in, like all of the rocket fuel for the Apollo missions, because it was like frozen, like liquefied oxygen and hydrogen and things like that. They kept them all in giant thermos flasks, basically. But yeah, if you go on to thermos.co.uk, they've got a January sale on. And you get the most expensive thing they have, top of the range, is their Stainless King food flask with a 1.2 litre liquid flask combo set. RRP £52, but currently a knockdown price of £43.99. So if you want to get yourself a thermos flask,
with
an
£6
unbreakable
saving.
stainless one, get over there now. Yeah, so hopefully I'll release this, before January's up. Otherwise, listeners will miss out on that bargain.
Well, now you have to, Russ.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I don't remember the last time I've ever used a flask.
No, not at all. I think probably school, maybe. I don't know.
Definitely school age.
Actually, even secondary school, I used to just drink out of a bottle, like a plastic bottle. I think I had a Mr. T thermos flask at primary school. The primary school, with
the little cup on top,
plastic thermos flask with characters printed on the side.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the one and only time I've ever owned a proper thermos flask. Now thinking about it, but I don't think that had glass in it. Surely not.
Could not for kids.
Imagine if it did.
I mean, then again, obviously, we went to school after this episode aired, so maybe things had improved by then.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I just had orange juice in it, or milk. Actually, it's probably milk. Hey, I'm glad they're still going. I'm still flabbergasted. I never really appreciated just how dangerous they were.
Something about the idea of something imploding,
which
makes
it
sound scarier than exploding. Even
absolutely.
though surely that just means it sucks all the stuff inwards and you're fine. It doesn't it's not going to shower you with. Or is the idea that it sucks things in and then blows them outwards?
Well, it was for me the fear of something going wrong with a CRTV wasn't that it would explode, but because it was going to implode, it was like the back of the TV was going to hit you in the face. So it was like that just seemed more obsessing, that somehow you were just tampering with nature as much as anything. And it was going to be the back of the TV full of all the electronics that was going to explode in your eyes.
Yeah, I guess so. There's also that thing about with TVs that apparently they don't. Even if you unplug them, they don't actually lose their electricity. So,
I remember that. Yeah,
so you could end up electrocuting yourself with a TV that's unplugged. So really, actually, it's amazing. Teenagers across the land weren't being murdered by all of these stray TVs when people converted to flat screens.
Well, all I can say is thank God we have all those public safety announcements to keep us on the straight and narrow, Russ. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't look at those insulating discs on pylons in the same way at all. They frighten the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, think twice.
Get from one vacuum, should we go to another one?
Ooh, very good, yes.
Of the sun, they come from a recent edition of Tomorrow's World, in which we suggested that the nuclear reactions inside the sun that generate sunlight may have stopped. Well, tonight we can offer an explanation why one of the byproducts of such nuclear reactions appears to be missing. This is what I said in that original report. It's of the hydrogen. We can detect the helium, we can measure the positrons, we can bask in the sunshine. Spectroscopes show the presence of the boron and the beryllium, but what we can't find are nearly enough neutrinos. So our reaction may easily be fundamentally out of balance. The missing neutrinos, alarming stuff. Now, we seemed at that time to have two stark possibilities. Those missing neutrinos meant that either the theory of nuclear reactions in stars like the sun is wrong, or, as the science journal Nature suggested, the sun has gone out. If you're anything like me, you'd place your bets on option number one. It's the theory which is up the creek. But if the theory is wrong, well, you may not be prepared to take the consequences, because that theory is basic to the formation of life itself. The average human body is a collection of simple elements. Around about 36 pounds of carbon, a couple of pounds of phosphorus, some sulfur, some iron, a little sodium, some calcium, manganese, trace elements, some nitrogen, and not to mention 140 pounds of water. In fact, you could buy your ingredients for about £4. And if that sounds very good value, never forget that the elements which go to make up you and me are second-hand. They come from the food we eat, which in turn came from the soil, from the earth itself. Now, cosmologists are still working out the details of where the earth came from. But one thing they know for certain, the atoms of the elements in the earth that go to make up you and me were forged originally by nuclear reactions going on in the heart of a star. That is why that theory is so important, the theory which now desperately needs an explanation for the missing neutrinos.
No musical number from Rod this time, Mark, unfortunately.
More's the pity, yes.
More's the pity. But we do see him reflecting on the past again, throwing to himself, and sort of doing what we've seen them do a couple of times, and that's do a little audit of their own program.
Yeah, they're parking their tanks on our lawn here, Ross. Yeah, it's one of the, it's kind of like sort of like the greatest hits of classic Rod, but without actually any of the hits. Even down to the fact that we see multiple Rods a little bit later on, because we split this into two halves. Yeah, but like he's reflecting on a piece that they've clearly discussed before. We don't know quite when. We haven't come across it yet, and we're not going to hunt it down.
He doesn't look particularly different.
No. I would argue he looks almost. For all this could well be last week, Russ. The only difference is that he's wearing different trousers, seemingly.
Yeah, it's the old green screen's back. So Rod's standing in front of the green screen, which is
a fabulous beige suit.
Yes, yeah. He's basically pointing at a slightly larger version of himself because the screen's slightly zoomed in. Well, so he's explaining how what elements are formed, how we're formed from elements, and those elements come from stars, but then there being a problem because there's not enough neutrinos.
Yes.
Is that...
There's missing neutrinos, which mean that some of the fundamental theories of how the universe work, they don't realize themselves. And because of these missing neutrinos, it means that either the theories are completely wrong, or it means that actually the sun is or has gone out. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean that, it's going to be black skies tomorrow and we're all going to die of frostbite, but it means that it is switched off. He doesn't say this, but I'm guessing there might be millennia still of wonderful sun heat coming our way, but it's finite. So that to me seemed to be what the crux was. That with these missing neutrinos, scientists couldn't quite realize exactly what was going on. But fret not. They have weighed now at the Moscow Institute of whatever. They've weighed some neutrinos, which means that they have now balanced out the equations, which mean that the sun is not going out. I think that's right, isn't it? Because the weird thing is we both independently watched it several times, and it's not quite clear.
He goes a little bit around the houses, and I have to say, because of the way we watch this, I tend to get distracted by stuff as well. so I obviously was instantly distracted by...
Don't you say we. When I watch this, I pay full attention.
Well, I was instantly distracted by his shelf of goods.
We'll come on to that separately, yeah.
At some points, I couldn't understand why the neutrinos were anything to do with us being made out of £4 worth of stuff. You see what I mean? Like,
phosphorus or whatever, yeah.
Like the creation of elements and the presence of neutrinos, I think, are two different. It's theories. I don't really understand
correct,
why they were connected together.
To me, this is about the missing neutrino in the equations that are really talking about whether the sun is switched on or not. The whole thing about, because he then goes, as you rightly say, he then goes on to talk about how we're all made up of stardust. And which has nothing to do. I actually don't think it has anything to do with what he was talking about, except that I think when he was talking in the original piece, what we see in the background and what I'll describe to you is that the old Michael Rod is standing behind this kind of weighing scales.
Michael Rod Prime, I think.
Prime Rod, yeah. Big old slab of prime rod in the background, and he is talking about elements. He is talking about elements that kind of make up the sun or make up the formula that that it's very difficult, without having seen the original piece, it's very difficult to work out exactly what he's talking about. So, but then he goes on to talk about the elements and how we're made up of stardust. And to do that, to illustrate that, he stands in front of a supermarket shelf, and on there are some classic BBC props where you have a big can, and the label now says phosphorus instead of, I don't know, Super 8? No, that's not a thing. Super 7, whatever it was called. Whatever our granddads used to drink.
Watney's Red Barrel?
That was one, yeah. Was it a Red Squirrel or something as well, or have I made that up? And the thing is, and you and I both were distracted by exactly the same thing at exactly the same time, which is obviously one of the things we look at or look towards when we're auditing is whether the BBC have allowed some clear and obvious shilling to step onto the screen. And in the case of the supermarket shelf, it absolutely does, because I think you and I both, our eyes are immediately drawn to the big stocked, like a very generously stocked side of the shelf that had both Heinz spaghetti hoops and Heinz baked beans on, which, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not made up of either of those things. On the day of my birth, Russ, I don't believe I had any spaghetti hoops or any baked beans in me. Now, I'm not saying I haven't had any in me since, but I'm saying that at that point, definitely I didn't. No. And then the other thing that really confused me is what does he talk about? He talks about, let me just look up the words here, because when he's talking about the Stardust thing, he is talking about the fact that obviously the idea is that the original matter came from stars, and when they died and they exploded, they sent out into the universe all the elements basically that we found, except those that we manufacture ourselves. And he refers to our ancestral star, singular, which has this lovely kind of romantic image in my mind that somewhere out there is one star that was born and died, one little individual star that was born and died to make up the elements that make up me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what he means at all, but that's exactly how it comes across, because it's a slightly clumsy phrase. It's very romantic, but I don't think it's accurate at all. And it did remind me, and I forgot to look this up, but I'm pretty sure it's Mormons who believe that when Mormons die, they go to heaven, but like there are gradations of heaven. There are different levels of heaven that you can aspire to. And I believe the tippy topmost level of heaven is one where you get to have your own planet. And I thought, that's quite nice, isn't it? It's like that's there you go. That's the universe has just completed itself. So we all have our own tiny little ancestral star that gave birth to us, and then when we die, we'll have our own little planet. How lovely! How romantic!
That sounds great. I might become a Mormon now. It does
brilliant. Sound good, doesn't it, Russ? Yeah. Something tells me you're not going to get to the tippy top tip of Mormon heaven, though.
Well, I have to give up caffeine for a start,
and you have to wear those magic pants as well.
Magic pants? What are the magic pants?
They have special spiritual underwear.
Do they?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that either.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the Mormon church these days, Russ.
Oh, I hope the Mormons come up in a future episode of this then. I'll be able to look them up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's the only way you educate yourself these days.
Exactly.
You have to sit there hoping something comes up in an episode that you can learn about it.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
So, I think we were both distracted at various points, so this didn't quite make sense to us. But luckily, fundamentally, he lands on the fact that some Soviet scientists have finally weighed a neutrino of some sort. And albeit it's infinitesimally small, it is just the right amount to realize whatever formula means that the sun is not going out.
Sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it, Mark?
It does. Those wily reds.
Actually, something I forgot to point out when we started watching this. Did you notice that Rod's sound doesn't cut in until halfway through a word? No, wait a second. I'll show you.
No, I didn't see that. No, do tell. Do show.
So when Sue's awkwardly drinking.
Yeah, here we go.
All right.
Listen
to Rod's audio.
Of the sun. They come from a recent edition of Tomorrow's World.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Interestingly...
You just hear him say, pictures of the sun. So you do say something, pictures of the sun.
Yeah, he walks in stage right, and he's halfway through a word. Interestingly, when they play the clip that's playing in the background, you finally hear it, they also start halfway through a word.
So I wonder whether that's why Sue was being awkward, because the camera was on her for slightly too long.
That makes perfect sense. It was supposed to cut over.
It was supposed to cut over, and it cut over too late, and then it cut into his microphone too late. That's what I was guessing.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
this first half, what should I do? So everything's connected, this first and second half.
Yeah. Well, should we just barrel
So
on?
let's barrel on, because
don't do your research bit until...
I might as well cover the neutrinos in one big lump. It's genuinely interesting. It was the thing that I got most into when I was doing the research this
It was
afternoon.
the bit when I was thinking about it last night where I thought, actually, you're going to spend some time in this bit, because I would imagine it's probably quite difficult to get into.
Also, this second half is when they absolutely pull out all the stops, because this second half is it's superb.
It's too many rods.
All right, in for a penny, in for a pound. Does the now weighty neutrino help us to interpret an earlier report we brought you on the cosmologist's theory about the size of the universe? You may remember we said that if the universe were infinite in extent, it would provide so many instances of our lives that every conceivable possibility would crop up. There'll be one Earth where I'll go and sit in this chair. And there'll be another where I'll decide to do something else. There'll be Earths where the slight possibility of you becoming Prime Minister will come up. There'll be others where you become a striptease artist or a murderer. And I'm not saying there could be. If the universe is infinite, there must be such Earths. There's too many rods. Well, there is one way out of this dilemma. The mass of all the stars like the Sun has the effect of bending space itself. If only there was enough mass in the universe, space could close up around us like a drop of water, with us trapped in its surface. So, although you'd never get to an edge, the universe wouldn't be infinite. It would be more like a vast four-dimensional bubble. Now, if that was so, there simply wouldn't be enough room for every possibility to crop up. The Earth would probably be the only Earth there is, with just one of me telling one of you all this. It's a much more comfortable idea, I feel, than the universe which goes on forever. So, which universe do we actually have? Well, unfortunately, there aren't sufficient stars in the sky to weigh enough to close the universe in this neat, tidy, compact way. Unless, that is, those Russians are right. You see, in every cubic foot of universe, there are 3 million neutrinos. Now, if each of those has a mass, be it ever so tiny, they'd outweigh the stars and the galaxies themselves. The question is, would that extra mass be enough to produce a closed universe? Well, that, of course, depends on just how heavy the neutrino turns out to be. But it's by no means impossible. So if here on Earth you're not Prime Minister, only Leader of the Opposition, well, perhaps that's a situation you should accept with resignation.
Rod's really stepped things up a gear now, hasn't he? But this second half of the really, I think it's probably my favourite sequence of the whole programme. Once again, it's the Michael Rod show.
This is a confident Rod who's firing on all cylinders, Russ.
Absolutely, yeah,
it's fabulous.
Yeah. Special effects masterclass. I liked your description of it as Michael-plicity.
Well, he originally he stole my thing, which is too many rods. So to describe it, like he's talking about kind of the idea that one of the theories about the universe is there at this point, and again, it should be pointed out, he is referring back to a previous segment on a previous episode. So in a sense, we're talking about two different segments from two different episodes. But in that previous episode, he's positing the idea that the universe, an infinite expanding universe, is full of infinite possibilities. So therefore, ... there are an infinite number of Earths with an infinite number of Michael Rods doing an infinite number of things, which is all the better that he comes up with these mind-blowing examples of infinite possibilities. There'll be one Earth where I'll go and sit in a chair. I mean, already, where and there'll be another where I'll decide to do something else. And again, I love that phrase, do something else other than sit in a chair. And that other thing, that something else could be, plant a dirty bomb outside the Trocadero Centre. Doesn't matter. He didn't sit in the chair. That's the important thing to remember. There'll be Earths where the slight possibility of you becoming Prime Minister will come up, which I think is incredibly rude. Because surely in an infinite number of Earths with an infinite number of probabilities, there are an infinite number of chances where you won't just become Prime Minister. You are guaranteed to be Prime Minister. Yeah. And in fact, you might be the only person who can save the United Kingdom or the world, because there are an infinite number of possibilities. Yeah. And there'll be others where you'll become a striptease artist or a murderer, he says. And that's the thing. It's like,
Right.
so either your choices are to become prime minister, which apparently to him is the pinnacle of everything, or, I mean, if at the other end of the spectrum, you're either a murderer or a striptease artist.
That is line of the episode to me. Striptease artist, I mean, we've talked about Rod's psyche.
Oh, haven't we
several times
just?
before?
It's not our fault. He's the one who's opening it up and revealing it to us.
But to bring those two, like, not you know, you could say, like, I don't know, astronaut or
Yes.
or something
Chef,
like
I don't know.
astronaut or movie star.
Yeah.
But like, no, his two examples are striptease artist
Or murderer. I mean, you know, talk about shaming. I mean, the thing is, he doesn't say strippers. He says striptease artists. So, like, even the word artist, like, implies some kind of quality. I don't know. I found that kind of like, Jesus, Rod. You know, bloody hell, moral equivalence. You know, like, it's almost like you'll either be a murderer or murdered at someone's hands. It's shocking. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's really revealing himself there. I think unnecessary. You know, probably to his surprise, he's revealing his psyche once again to us.
Yeah, it does. It really feeds into the previous episode where we were speculating on him sort of thinking about missed opportunities, that sort of thing, like that.
Yeah.
So
the fork in the road.
You know, yeah, exactly. So when this,
which we'll come back to that because I think it explains something else later on when he's talking about the different options. It really is kind of it's the fork in the road. It's the path less traveled, or the path you reject.
So in his mind there is if the multiverse theory is correct, in his mind that means there are an infinite number of Rods who have the music career that he so craved, and he hasn't got it.
I genuinely think he sees the world as a zero sum, like it's binary, isn't it? And unfortunately he pressed the wrong switch.
This is why, when he suggests that actually our universe is essentially a bubble universe that has crimped off from the whole of the universe, and it actually only has one set of possibilities contained within it. He finds this much more reassuring.
He does.
Because obviously to him that means
correct.
There are no Rods.
There are no missed opportunities.
Yes,
there is only everything's fate.
He is Roddimus Prime.
He is Roddimus Prime. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So therefore, you can't cry over spilt milk. He's clearly so uncomfortable with the idea that there are infinite number of universes out there with an infinite number of Earths, where there are Michael Rods who are, climbing the pop charts, and that's just too much. He would rather seal us all off from all those other possibilities than embrace the idea that maybe he could have made better choices. Give us a choice, Russ. Maybe we want to say in this.
But I mean, I've decided I think the visuals are very impressive.
They are. It's really well done.
And this will definitely be one of your Instagram pictures.
Yeah,
the bit
absolutely.
where we've got Rod in triplicate.
Yes.
And there's Rod seated.
Yes.
And then my favourite bit, there's another Rod who walks over and leans on the chair.
The one who rejected sitting down and embraced the idea of doing something else, which in this case is standing next to the same chair.
The real rebel of the bunch. Leaning on the chair, and then another one comes in from the side. I'm not sure which Rod that is.
That's present.
He's not the striptease artist.
No, no. He's the us Rod. He's the one who's looking back at the old episode.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So right.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. We haven't a descriptor for this Rod. Our Rod.
Beta Rod.
They're all beta rods.
They're all beta rods, yeah. But then, and then once that lovely little sequence is over, we then get another bit of green screen where Rod's back on the neutrinos kick again, and he's explaining how many neutrinos there will be in a cubic foot of the universe. And he does this lovely bit where he reaches into what must be like a big blue or green bucket. Yeah. But to us, it looks like he's reaching into the universe.
Into the star field itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And pulls out this cube to show us, which you can't really see properly against the thing. But it was a nice little bit of business, I thought.
He literally pulls up a cubic foot of the universe.
Yes, yeah.
When he's saying that there are billions of neutrinos contained within. But the conclusion basically is that he would much rather we're all hived off from the rest of the universe so that he doesn't feel sad about his decisions.
Yeah. And it's all hinging on the research of this this Moscow institute to wade the neutrino, isn't it?
For theoretical and something physics, isn't it? MITEP, or in English. Yeah.
Would you like to guess whether they were correct, Mark?
Oh, could I, Russ? I mean, I've got an inkling. I've got an inkling they were not correct.
No, they were completely incorrect. Right? They're absolutely completely out by a magnitude of loads. Like neutrinos are far, 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 far lighter than what they calculated. Their calculation essentially helped solve that sun problem.
Yeah, it felt like it was crowbarred in. The weight just happened to be exactly what it is to make everyone happy.
Yeah. Far too convenient.
Yeah.
I was looking into looked into neutrinos. They're pretty fascinating things. I didn't know such a thing existed, but they have no width or volume. They're essentially one-dimensional.
Ooh.
So they're single points. So you can't. They're very hard to measure because they just travel through everything because they have no width and they have no charge either. So they don't interact with anything. So the only way you can find a neutrino and measure it is if by random chance it collides with something and you happen to be watching the thing that it's colliding, which happens so incredibly rarely because they're so tiny. It's actually very difficult to do. And still, even now, it's still incredibly difficult to measure them. The best way they found to do it is by putting experiments at the bottom of mines, because then that blocks out all of the other radiation, and the only things that can pass through the Earth that easily are neutrinos. So they just sail through the Earth unhindered, and then they might occasionally collide with your experiment if you're lucky. This is what these American people did in the late 60s, and they were called Ray Davis, not the bloke from the Kinks, and John Buckall. And they went to the deepest gold mine in America, which is called the Homestake Gold Mine. And this is a nice little bit of business, Mark. The Homestake Gold Mine was set up by none other than George Hearst, father of William Randolph Hearst.
Oh.
Have you ever watched Deadwood?
Yes.
The TV series Deadwood. George Hearst turns up in the later series.
Yes.
So it
rings a bell.
Yeah, that's
him.
So he's that's him. The guy who sets up the telegraph and takes over the newspaper and all of that. That's him. And he lived in Deadwood and he set up this Homestake mine, which was just down the road from Deadwood. And using various criminal activities and owning the local newspaper, he turned it into the biggest and deepest gold mine in America. And that's how he became incredibly rich. And that's how William Randolph Hearst became incredibly rich and became a newspaper baron.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So this gold mine, what these Ray Davis and his mate did, they set up this giant 100,000 gallon tank and they filled it with dry cleaning fluid. And dry cleaning fluid has got lots of chlorine in it. Mm-hmm. And then they just sat back and waited because they'd be able to measure if any of the chlorine atoms got hit by a neutrino. And so that's what they did. They left it running from 1970 to 1994, and they were able to occasionally spot one.
Money for
and then they'd be able to extrapolate from there how many neutrinos there were.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why. This is why Rod is saying that there's not enough neutrinos. He said there's only a third as many as there should be. And so some people said, oh, that means the sun's gone out.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, hang on a minute, if the sun went out, surely we'd notice. But actually, it turns out that the sun's so big that even if the middle of it went out now, it would take a couple of thousand years before us to even notice.
Yeah.
Because the heat takes so long to come out of the core.
Yeah.
So that was their theory, but that's absolute nonsense. It turns out it's our old friend quantum physics. And actually, there's 3 different flavours of neutrino, which they didn't realise. So there's the ones that come out of the sun are called electron neutrinos, but then there's 2 others. There's a muon? No, muon. A muon neutrino and a tau neutrino.
Oh.
And they thought they were all 3 separate things, but actually they can switch between the 3. So
that's how they get you, isn't it?
So this guy's big tub of dry cleaning fluid could only detect the electron ones. But actually, they were oscillating between the 3 states. So that's why there was only a third spotted, because the other 2/3 were the 2 other types that they couldn't detect, thus explaining why they could only see a third of them. Actually, they were all coming out of the sun. They were just changing into a different flavour. So yeah, anyway, this was proved in 2002 by some people down the bottom of a different mine in Ontario. They used a giant tank full of heavy water, which looks really cool if you look it up. It's called the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory. Looks like something out of... what's that film when they go into space and it turns out they've gone to hell Event Horizon.
Event Horizon, yeah.
It looks like the thing out of Event Horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then they spotted the other two types of neutrino. Everyone got a Nobel Prize. It was all good. But part of it, through all this experimentation, they found out that the Russian experiment was totally wrong. Subatomic things are weighed in a thing called electron volts, which is like, because there's no point in weighing something in grams because it's so tiny, as Rod shows us, it'd be like a million noughts or whatever. So the Russians claimed that a neutrino was 30 electron volts, but they still not worked it out yet, but they reckon it's got to be less than 0.16 electron volts. So not nearly enough. So, Rod says that might make up the mass of the universe. Mm-hmm. Actually, they weigh so little that they can't possibly be responsible for making up the mass of the universe at all. Rod doesn't mention dark matter.
No.
But they were thought of as possibly being dark matter, because dark matter is the idea that 85% of the universe, the mass of it, is unknown.
It's unobservable, unseeable.
Unknown.
Yeah.
But it can't be neutrinos because they're too light. So they've had to, think what else it could be. But neutrinos are still very interesting. Like, research into them, because they're so difficult to research, there's still very little known about them. So there's a lot of research still going into them, and they think they might hold the secret as to why the universe exists, because it should be the case that all of the antimatter and matter wipe each other out and there should be no universe at all. And for some reason, they think that there's something to do with the way neutrinos behave that has stopped that happening. But it's all theoretical, Mark. It's all theoretical. Nothing's been proven. And that's why I didn't bother even going into the multiverse stuff, because that is totally unproven. I mean, we could come up with our own theories of the multiverse, and they could be just as true as any, anything Rod suggested there or anything any physicist suggests.
Well, I'll give us some credit. I think might be a bit more true. It's certainly more ambitious and more imaginative than Rod's.
But I always think the multiverse, it's very popular these days, isn't it? Like it's had a real resurgence recently, isn't it? Yeah. Like all our films and TV seem to be involving multiverses. Yeah. I think the first time I was aware of the multiverse is that old episode of Star Trek where they go to the baddie universe, and Mr. Spock's got a goatee.
He's got a goatee, of course. Yes, absolutely.
There's something very exciting about the whole idea. I can see why it's persisted in like fiction.
Well, you were also a huge fan of Sliders, Ross. Let's not get away with it.
Exactly. Yeah. I wonder. I haven't watched an episode of Sliders for about 20 years.
It's aged well.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. Yeah. Was it John Rhys Davis, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And there was that guy, and he left, and he was replaced by his brother, who looks almost exactly the same as him.
He looks preternaturally young. Like, he just looks like a baby-faced guy, doesn't he? What's his name? Yeah. You're going to force me to look it up now, because I thought I might.
Is it Jerry O'Connell?
Oh, that does ring a bell. Yeah, hang on a second. Oh, it was created by Robert K. Weiss. Jerry O'Connell. Well done.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? I was thinking of the woman, and I thought Lloyd came up, and it's Sabrina Lloyd.
Was she called like Duck or something, or Quack? She was called something Wade. She's called Wade.
She was Wade, yeah. And then just look at the characters.
I knew something to do with ducks.
The original Sliders from left to right: Wade Wells, Sabrina Lloyd, Rembrandt Brown, Cleavon Derricks, Professor Arturo, John Rhys Davies, and Quinn Mallory, Jerry O'Connell. Sliders had a turbulent history. That was the whole point of it, wasn't it? Yeah, no, funny enough, the phrase that hovered over my viewing of the second half of this segment was dark matter. It felt like that was the dog didn't bark. But then I suppose it's partly because in 1980 perhaps it just wasn't popular science. It wasn't a known thing. No. And obviously the Russians had said, hey, no, don't worry, Rod, we got it all sorted. We found it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, according to my research, if neutrinos did weigh as much as those Russians said, then the universe would have collapsed in on itself years ago. Like, it would weigh too much.
That's interesting. Quick question. Would that mean Rod did or didn't have a musical career?
Do you think he would happily sacrifice the universe?
He would have embraced it, Russ. He would have gone running straight towards
for a brief shot at number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
As the universe collapsed around him.
That's all he wants. Before we leave this, as he usually does, he ends with a kind of a little kind of flippant send-off. And you'll recall, if you're listening, that one of the examples of how the multiverse might work is that there's an Earth where there's a slight possibility of you, i.e. us, becoming Prime Minister. And his example at the end amused me greatly because he shows you, he then goes on to say that, you may become Prime Minister. You right now, you may only be Prime Minister, or you may only be the leader of the opposition. And we see two photos, one of Margaret Thatcher, who at this point in time was indeed the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
I'm
and
sure
the other
Rod was delighted by that.
You get the impression anyway, no, that's we'll leave that. And the other was a picture of James Callaghan, who at the time was in fact Her Majesty's, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And yet, as I said to you in the notes, and as you yourself know, Russ, that is the worst possible example of the dichotomy of choice, of the way fate goes. Because Jim Callaghan literally was Prime Minister last year when this is right. They are two pictures of two different Prime Ministers. He could have picked anyone else. And actually, if they broadcast this in a couple of weeks' time, they could have had Michael Foot.
Mark.
Sorry, Russell. Yes, Russell.
Mark.
Yes.
I think it's Rod's.
This
sending
is your
a message
pet theory,
to Callaghan.
Yeah, resign.
If you listen to him, he says that's a situation you should accept with resignation.
Yes.
Right? And then they show Callaghan's face. Literally a week later, Mark, Callaghan resigns.
Did he stand down? Had he already resigned? And it was
no,
standing down?
he handed in his resignation as leader of the Labour Party on October the 15th, 1980.
Oh my God.
I looked it up.
This goes deeper than I ever imagined.
So Rod is essentially calling for Callaghan to resign with his cheeky little joke there. And Callaghan exceeds less than a week later.
With hilarious consequences for everybody. Well, I didn't appreciate that. I just thought it was a really bad example of if you take a picture of somebody who was Prime Minister and then laugh at the fact that they're not Prime Minister, it's a bad example. But you think shots fired? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh, crikey!
Yeah.
A chill just went down my spine, Russ.
Yeah, Rod is influencing UK politics,
but not the music charts. Next.
This is now the most fertile, the most productive farmland in Britain. In the last century, the flat fens of East Anglia had a facelift, which turned waterlogged bogland into a farmer's delight. It was thanks to a man-made system of drains which took water from the land and channeled it into rivers, thanks to pumping stations like this one. Even this summer, the wettest for 24 years, critical water levels were still effectively controlled. But maintaining this drainage system is a labour-intensive, time-consuming business, especially when it comes to fighting the number one enemy, weeds. Every year they have to be cut and then laboriously removed by rake. With miles and miles of waterway like this to cover, it takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. But now they've jazzed it up a bit. The latest in mechanised weed cutters. This one, specially tailored for the fens, has been scaled down to fit the narrow drains. And behind that distinctive style, there's definite logic. It has a simple lever control. You steer the cutter just as you feel she should go, and the paddles respond accordingly. And paddle power's no accident either. The weeds slip harmlessly through, where a conventional propeller could get snarled up.
Water warrior, come out to play. Well, that's all your favourite sort of stuff, that, Mark, isn't it? It's some sort of agricultural farming segment set in the countryside.
Love it.
Yeah, pond weed.
Oh,
all
my
your
favourite
things.
Yeah. Love those things. It's exactly why we started this podcast, Russ, wasn't it? Talk about weed clearance. Can't believe we've had to talk about it twice in 14 episodes.
I mean, do you think? I wonder if maybe in the future they'll end up getting some of McCann's, whatever it was, gibberellic acid.
Oh, well remembered.
And just dumping that in the canals.
That was a great pull, Ross. You should be very proud of yourselves there. Yeah, exactly. Well, why not? Yeah.
To be fair, I think it's a pretty cool looking bit of machinery. It looks like fun.
Yes,
I'd like to have a go on it.
Yeah, I agree.
it's essentially like a miniature paddle steamer.
Yeah.
With hedge cutters on the front.
Yeah.
That they drive around the canals of East Anglia, chopping up all the weed that's clogging up the canals, so they maintain their efficiency. And we see a farmer who looks like an exact cross between John Thor and Dennis Waterman,
And
like some
Phil
sort
Collins.
of combined Sweeney farmer.
He does look like a combined Sweeney farmer. You're absolutely right.
Chugging about in it to the sound of, hang on, I'll look this up.
Oh, you looked it up.
Davenport Blues by Jack Teagarden.
Good song. Good tune.
A jaunty New Orleans style jazz number. I can see what they've done there. Obviously, it's
Yes.
a paddle steamer, so it's
Absolutely.
evocative of New Orleans.
Yes.
And it seems to work a treat. And those sort of Victorian urchins by the side of the river who are
Yes.
having to drag the weed out by their rakes, they can
Yes.
soon be out of their jobs, I think, by the looks of it.
Thank God. This is Thatcher's Britain now. Do you understand? Callahan is last year's man, Russ. To be fair, it does look fun. Yeah, I mean, we literally see men in overalls on the banks of this kind of, what would you call it, a culvert in the fens, and they're they have these long rakes and they're pulling out the weeds. So yeah, I have no doubt that this absolutely revolutionised weed clearance in the fens. Yeah, let's talk about it more.
Don't you think it's strange though? Because that little paddle, I've never seen a boat like that before.
No, I've
And
not.
obviously, the reason it's got the paddles is so that because if it had a propeller, they get stuck in the weeds.
Yes.
Whereas this paddle can just like go over the top of it.
Yeah.
So there's many other places where there's weeds. So like, why is it like, for example, in Florida, they have fan boats, don't they?
You do.
Famously, great fun. I don't know if you've ever been on a fan boat.
No,
I absolutely recommend it. It's just like Gentle Ben promised.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But you'd think, them having paddle boats over there, they would think of having like little miniature paddle boats to chug about, the Everglades in. But I've never seen one over there at all. This seems to be a purely a new invention for the.
I mean, you say you've never seen one over there. You've never seen one over here.
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong. East Anglia might be chock full of these little paddle boats, but I've never seen one.
It looks incredibly manoeuvrable.
It does. It really spins in a sixpence. It does. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it looks like a ton of fun. It was one of those things when I first saw the clip, I was thinking like, God, this seems archaic. Like, God, is this the most futuristic thing they can have? And it plays on, especially when I watched it the second time. I'm thinking like, no, actually, this is a perfectly engineered little device to solve a specific problem in a kind of a unique setting. And as it went on, I actually gained a huge amount of respect for this little water warrior. Which is a name, as you rightly point out. At one point, they try and black out with black tape, as they did with the snowplow in the last episode we talked about. But again, at some point, you can actually read the name of it entirely, because either it was filmed earlier before they remembered to mask it out, or the tape fell off because it was in the water half the time.
They've made exactly the same error as last time.
Yeah, shocking.
But I genuinely can't remember the name of the snowplow company from last time. So, Rolvo?
I was going to say it began with an R. Roblo.
I don't know.
Well, it's not like we're going to buy one.
No.
Though obviously, if they want to sponsor us, we promise we'll do a better ad read.
The presence of this name, Water Warrior, at least gave me a foothold in my research. And I found out this made in Britain by John Wilder Engineering. But they stopped trading in 1994, so you can't buy yourself a new one, Mark. I know you wanted to go out and buy a new one, but no, you can't. The only other mention of it I found was a 1984 copy of the Surrey and Hampshire Canal Society newsletter.
Okay.
And it turned out that Basingstoke Council had bought one to clear the canals down their way.
Yeah.
And back then, it cost them £14,000.
Ooh, that sounds like a lot of money.
That's a lot of money in 1984. Should we get the old inflation calculator out and see how much that is? It's about £50,000. £50,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. 50 grand for, well, I mean, yeah, okay. I mean,
who's paying for that? The farmer? Local council? What? I don't know. Like, if he...
Well, I mean, these days there's the Canal and River Trust, and I assume there must have been some kind of equivalent body that was overlooking waterways in Britain that bought that. Like, the farmer couldn't buy that on the wages Sweeney were being paid. There's no way he could afford it.
Unless he found a way that he could, like, I don't know, float animals in the water and chop their heads off with it or something.
And then they'd all pitch in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be great fun.
Yeah.
Farmer's delight. Once again, I mean, we're doing well this episode. These things still exist. Not that obviously not that very model, but weeds still need to be cut, Mark. They still need to be cut, and they still need to be machines to do them. And I found out that the absolute top of the range one, like the absolute Rolls Royce of weed cutting boats, is the truck saw. And that's going to cost you over $100,000 these days. But it is amphibious, Mark.
Oh, there you go.
You can trundle, like it's got tracks on it, and you can trundle up to the water and then just trundle in, and then the tracks act like giant paddles at the same time, and you go around doing your chopping. Yeah, it looks like great stuff.
That's a lot. Is it roughly the same size? Is it smaller? Is it bigger?
It was a little bit longer, but roughly the same size. It's still a one-man operation.
Actually, it should be explained that perhaps the Achilles heel of the Water Warrior was that it would cut all the weeds, but you would then have to go back, attach a rake to the front, and then scoop them all up and manually put them onto the bank. It's not manually, but lever up the scoop at the front. So albeit it was a one-man operation, it didn't do everything in one go, which seems like you're missing a trick there. But maybe
what you'd really like is some sort of thing like a combine harvester has, where it feeds them in and it just shoots them out of a pipe out the top onto the bank,
straight onto the bank. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right.
I'm not sure whether the truck saw does that, but if it doesn't, we should get into the.
I was about to say, Russ, this sounds like we're going to make our money now.
Yeah, get down the patent office immediately.
Whilst we're busy constructing our oil rig, we should be getting on this to make some quick cash.
Oh, speaking of oil rigs, Mark.
Oh, it's a tragedy.
On the 27th of March this year, there was a major disaster in the North Sea. A Norwegian oil rig, which was being used as a floating hotel, capsized because one of the 5 legs of the rig had collapsed and broken off. Within minutes, the Alexander Keeland was upside down. 123 men were drowned. Surprisingly, the rig didn't sink. Buoyancy tanks in the remaining 4 legs kept the rig afloat. And next week they'll begin to try and salvage the enormous structure, something that's never been tried before. They're using an entirely new technique to turn it up the right way. The rig is now lying in the sheltered waters of a fjord near the oil town of Stavanger in southern Norway. All that can be seen of it are the base pontoons of the 4 remaining legs, each one like a giant red Smartie with a propeller on top. 2 small companies, one British, the other Norwegian, won the contract to salvage the rig, which is worth at least £30 million. Salvaging with cranes and lifting barges would only cause more damage to the already crippled rig. So the British company involved calculated they could turn it without using them. They could do it just by using compressed air, water and 2 computers.
Well, it's been a while since we had something about oil rigs, isn't it, Mark?
It has. It's a shame it's such a tragic story, or half a tragic story. This is one of those weird Tomorrow's World kind of whiplash tonal shifts that they sometimes embrace, where it's gone from a really jaunty, jazzy soundtrack tale where the last image of the previous segment about the weed clearance and the fens is literally our man, the Sweeney, riding off into the sunset on his little, chugging along on his little boat. And we cut to Judith Hann in the studio kind of smiling at this kind of lovely, wistful, kind of romantic image. And then she immediately tells us about a genuine, horrible tragedy that happened only 7 months previous to this broadcast about one of our normally one of our favourite subjects, oil rigs. And it's something you and I have never heard of.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I mentioned in the notes, I do think that the late 70s and the 80s, very much the golden age of disasters.
The golden age.
Yeah, I feel like of sort of like man-made disasters rather than natural disasters. You know what I mean? It was always like a plane crash, a train crash, a oil rig on fire, or things like that. Yeah. And it seemed to happen all the time. But I thought we had a pretty good handle on most of them. I think if we sat down, we could sit here all afternoon naming all the different various ones. Yeah. But this one had completely passed me by, which is quite surprising because 123 people died, which is a lot. Which is a not insignificant number of people.
No, it's not that far short of Piper Alpha either.
No, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I was gobsmacked. And the piece isn't even really about that. It's about like a plucky British company who are sort of a bunch of ragtag amateurs who've won a £30 million contract to salvage the damn thing.
Yeah.
It's a really odd. It's an oddly framed segment throughout, and because they never really explain what went wrong. Well, I mean, we know what went wrong, which is that one of the legs came off, so basically it toppled over. Like clearly it was imbalanced, and but they don't explain why the leg fell off. So there are 5 legs, one of them falls off. There's only 4 left, but it was clearly in a kind of a. It was structured in such a way that, you know, it wasn't the middle leg, it was one of the side ones, so it kind of toppled. And I mean, how quickly did it topple over? It must have been bloody quick.
14 minutes.
Oh, wow, wasn't that quick then, actually? So how many how many people survived?
So there were 200 men on board.
Wow.
And 123 died.
Crikey. I mean, that's not a great hit rate, is it? Of like survivals. So 14 minutes. So obviously, you know, elements of that hotel. I think the word hotel also probably is an accommodation block.
A flotel, they call them.
Flotel. Yeah.
Flotel, yes.
To kind of service the oil rigs, I suppose. And it's a horrible story, except that they don't really tell it, do they? It really is just about the salvage. And then it becomes this lovely story, this lovely British company who are going to making big bank.
yeah. Well, because they've got 2 computers, Mark.
They do have 2 computers, on a raft.
Yeah. much is made of these 2 computers and their incredible ability to know how to
rewrite how to rewrite a submerged oil rig. Yeah, and the weird thing is, I said to you as well in the notes, they don't really tell us how or why something went wrong in the first place to end up in such a high mortality rate. Now, to be fair, they may have already discussed this in the previous episode, so maybe we can put that to one side. But nor is this segment broadcast at a time when we find out the results of the 2 computers' hard work.
No.
Because we're never going to find out exactly whether they managed to successfully rewrite the rig either. It just seems like they've actually picked the single worst time to talk about either of the 2 subjects related to the Alexander Keeland flotel. I don't know. It boggles my mind even now. Like I think I'm a bit angry. I'm smiling, but I'm not happy.
I mean, they gave you. I mean, you were very eager to find out about it, so they've given you a nice little mystery.
Well, I knew you would tell me.
A little bit of anticipation for me to find out about it.
I'm anticipating exactly what the hell happened. And to be fair, when Han is talking us through the process, she has a fabulous little model that she's playing with.
That's great, yes. It's bolted to the wall so she can rotate it, which I quite like. And those really chunky feet that it had. So they almost look like emergency stop buttons. I wanted to
real press. Satisfying plunger kind of quality.
Yeah. I don't really notice in that VT. There was in the opening bit where it showed 5 blokes all surveying one of the upturned legs.
The giant red Smartie, as she described
the giant red Smartie with a propeller on it, as she says.
Yeah.
And there's only one fella in overalls and a hard hat.
Yeah.
Guarantee you that's one of the local Norwegian fellas. Yeah. And then there's 4 other blokes in flares and leather jackets.
Yeah.
That's the British crew, isn't it? That's the guarantee.
100% guaranteed. Yeah. That's exactly how that is. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. One of those men respects the sea. and their own lives, apparently. Yeah. And actually, it goes on further. There's a little bit when she's describing the process of how they're going to fill these the tanks and like the feet with like a mixture of water and sometimes to kind of make them sink and air and the other to make them to kind of have them raise. You see where like they've clamped this giant drill to the foot, so obviously going to drill a hole in to kind of attach like the pipe work that's going to pump in all this air or water. And obviously somebody has gone to the effort of, you know, very clearly in yellow pen or yellow chalk has drawn a big giant circle, and in the middle of that circle they have drawn like an X, obviously, for where the drill should go. And that drill is 2 foot wide of the mark. I'm not exaggerating. Like,
yeah. It'll do. It's in the right
close enough, isn't it? Yeah.
He's got the right leg, at least.
Despite the fact that the establishing shot, somebody had also written in chalk in big yellow letters, diesel tank.
Well, I guess, do you want to know about the Alexander Keeland?
Yeah, I do, actually. Yeah, I really do.
Well, Alexander Kielland himself is a very famous Norwegian writer, one of the big four Norwegian writers. So it's basically if we called one of our oil rigs Charles Dickens, basically. He's pretty much the Charles Dickens of Norway. But yeah, so this was in the Ekofisk oil field, which is 320 kilometres east of Dundee. And this, what I didn't realise from watching this, but actually this rig was not attached. It's not like it wasn't attached to the seabed in any way, like a proper oil rig, because it's a mobile drilling rig. So it floats. So it's designed to float rather than stand on the seabed. So on this night, so it was on 27th of March 1980, and it was driving rain and mist, and the wind was at 74 kilometres an hour, and there was waves up to 12 metres high, and the rig was next to an actual oil platform called Edda, and it was just like floating next to it. It was at 6:30. There was just a sudden loud crack, and the rig immediately leaned over by 30 degrees, and 5 of the 6 cables that kept it anchored just immediately snapped. So it's just one cable keeping it up, and then like 20 minutes later, that cable snapped, and the whole thing just went boom and capsized. And there are 130 men in the mess hall in the cinema, but like they hadn't evacuated because nobody'd really told them to evacuate or anything like that, and there wasn't really any procedure for it. So they'd just gone, oh well, it's leaning a bit, but we'll probably be okay, obviously. And then it suddenly went in, and then they were scuppered. And then there's loads of it had 7 50-man lifeboats on it and 20 20-man lifeboats, so plenty of lifeboats.
Yeah.
But the cables on the lifeboats were designed so that you couldn't detach them if they were under strain.
Right.
And obviously they were under strain because they were hanging off the side of a capsized rig. So they couldn't release the lifeboats. So that was another big problem. So they managed to get 2 rafts off, and 3 men got out of those 2 rafts. Then they threw a couple more rafts off, and that's rescued 13 men. And then 7 men were fished out of the sea, and then 7 other blokes actually managed to swim to the other oil rig. They obviously the 7 hardest blokes on board, I guess. And then there's like a standby ship that's meant to come along and help rescue people. That didn't rescue anybody. It took an hour to get there. And this ship, interestingly, this ship was called the Silver Pit. And do you know what other oil rig it was the standby vessel for subsequently?
Are you serious? Piper Alpha?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I don't know whether they had the same captain or not. He covered himself in glory. But there was 212 people on board. 123 were killed, and 20 of them were British. Just in case that's an important piece of fact. That's always an important fact in a disaster, isn't it?
Well,
how many of them are British?
Yeah,
that die?
there's that formula, isn't it? It's like 1 Brit equals 2 Americans equals 3 French and German equals 10 any other country. Yeah, but all the more reason that it's because initially when I thought I've never heard of this, I wonder if it's I kind of thought well maybe everyone who died was Norwegian, but if actual British people if real people died, then I'm surprised. I'm all the more surprised I've never heard of it.
But one of the things that happened was that so after Piper Alpha, they had a public inquiry, so that kept it in the news. What the Norwegian government did was they had a private inquiry behind closed doors. There was no publication of anything. They just basically looked into it and then released the report at the end, sort of thing. So there was much less sort of public scrutiny, which actually, even to this day, families of the survivors are not happy about because they reckon there's there could be problems with the report and things like that. But what the Norwegians found, was that there was a manufacturing fault. And there was basically, it was just like this little plate that was welded onto one of the legs, which was meant to hold a sonar device. It was only a 6mm weld, but it had been done badly. And it was just fatigue had somehow, and the waves and everything like that had just caused it to get worse and worse and crack. And that sort of then set in motion a load of other things, which then caused it to catastrophically fail. But they looked at the paint and they decided that it was a manufacturing fault, not a repair. And the oil rig was manufactured in France, Dunkirk in France, right? So the Norwegians blamed the French, right? So obviously the French launched their own inquiry, and guess what?
I can, whereas I couldn't possibly imagine what conclusion they came to.
They came up with the conclusion it was the Norwegians' fault.
My gosh, no way.
Yeah. They claimed it was Norwegian mismanagement that caused it. But it's generally accepted that this was the case. But the Norwegian government actually did a review of the incident just last year. They did a review of their own. Of their own review.
Yeah.
And they said, well, there were a few things that we got wrong, but fundamentally our report was correct. So we're not going to reopen the investigation. So yeah, I mean, the families of victims are still kind of a bit upset about that. But I think that always happens with big disasters and stuff. People never really feel like the case is closed, do they? They always feel like there's more to be found out with sort of things like that.
Yeah, because closure is a very difficult thing to get when you're grieving.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be satisfied with a big review, are you? You know, it's never going to come to the... To be fair, whatever conclusion it comes to is probably never going to satisfy everyone. So,
No. But as far as this whole salvage operation went, what I thought was interesting is that the way Hann cast it, it was like a salvage operation to make like money from, I don't know, like salvaging the rig and things like that. Is that what?
That's how it came across to me. Yeah.
No. The reason was because they couldn't. The main reason they had to do it was because they couldn't find 36 of the bodies. So the whole thing was to recover the 36 bodies out of it. That's why they were doing it. Which is probably why Hann didn't mention that. It's probably a bit grim for tea time. I don't know.
Thursday.
But it took them 3 attempts, and actually they only finally managed to do it in 1983. Succeeded in doing it. Once they'd recovered the bodies and done a few sort of tests on it and like analysis to see, and looked at it, they then just binned it into a fjord, into the Ned Strand fjord. They just scuttled it into there.
Oh wow! Okay.
So where it rests to this day. But yeah, so it did result in rules and regulations being tightened up. So they now all oil rigs now have a proper command structure, so that if something goes wrong, you know, people don't just still sit around in the cinema. Like somebody will go, right, everybody now go to here.
Muster stations, everyone. Yeah.
Yes, and all of this sort of malarkey. And also they redesigned the way lifeboats are hooked up, so that thing couldn't happen ever again either. And the only other thing is that the weird thing is shortly after this happened, there was another oil rig called the Henrik Ibsen, which nearly capsized as well. Luckily, it didn't. It lifted over by 20 degrees and then righted itself again. So naming your oil rig after a famous Norwegian author is do not do that.
Okay, we have to add that to our long list of.
Yeah. When we launch our oil rig, we're not going to name it after Stieg Larsson. No, he's sweet.
No,
Stieg Larsson Norwegian. No,
Swedish, yeah.
I don't know any other Norwegian authors, fortunately, so I don't think we'll end up naming it after a Norwegian author.
We'll find someone, though. I have no doubt. That's genuinely interesting, Ross. Thank you, because I had to stop myself researching because I thought, well, it sort of defeats the purpose of the podcast. Because it's absolutely fascinating with that. I'd never heard of it, but that something catastrophic obviously went wrong, and the tragedy of the guys in the mess hall in the cinema just kind of saying, "Oh, it'll be fine," and then just wait. I suppose, they could have saved themselves, really, couldn't they? You know, not with any great ease, but still, that's really awful. Tomorrow's World, That's what I'm talking about. That whiplash tonal shift. Because again, there are moments where Hann kind of has a little chuckle when she's describing things. Which is really unlike her. Normally, she's really spot on with kind of getting the tone right. Except that obviously it's not really about the tragedy. It is about the writing process, the salvage process, which is interesting. But as I said, bearing in mind, it only happened 7 months before. It's very fresh.
Yeah.
And then bearing in mind, as you've just explained, that they don't actually succeed for another 3 years. So it just does seem like it's just a weird time to, I don't know. It almost felt to me like they were rushing out the broadcast because somebody was going to scoop them. I don't know who. World in Action had to drop on, and in Tomorrow's World had to get it out before Granada could I don't know, but it had that kind of feel of you're getting it out there so that you can say that you did the story first, when actually the story is neither story was complete. I don't know. I may not be explaining myself properly, but you know what I mean in general.
Yeah, totally.
Still though, that was a good model.
This is an example of that new British small car launched yesterday. But this one is as good as 3 years old already. This particular Metro is spending its entire short working life testing alternative ways of beating corrosion. A month and a half from now, it will have experienced 5 of the toughest city winters on Earth.
The intention is to speed up artificially the vehicle's aging process. In fact, after just 12 weeks on this Midlands proving facility, this particular new Metro will have survived the equivalent of 5 winters in Detroit, a city famous in the motorcar business for its salty, polluting atmosphere, reducing proud automobiles to just heaps of corroded waste.
The treatment involves a 30-mile drive, which takes in, first of all, a bed of gravel chippings to get the paintwork well and truly attacked, then on through a spray of concentrated salty water to get corrosive fluid into every nook and cranny in the new vehicle, and then it's on to here. This is a figure 8 of mud and dust track. This gets a good cakey layer clinging to the body surface of the new model. And as if all this isn't enough, it's followed by 23 hours of something completely different.
Inside here, the temperature is well in excess of 40 centigrade, 100 Fahrenheit. In the steam room, the salty, mud-spattered, paint-chipped car is left to cook. It's an exaggeration of a garage, a nice warm environment in which all those corrosive elements can really start to work.
I think this is one of the most Partridge-like off-the-rod segments we've ever had, Mark. There's a lot of car stuff in Partridge, isn't there?
Yeah.
So Rod in a car.
He loves a Rover.
Yeah, so Rod in a car is sort of a perfect fit and sort of brings out all of his most Partridge-like qualities.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the people who have just heard.
Obviously, you don't like Top Gear, Mark. This is, again, another Top Gear type segment.
It's not that I don't like Top Gear. It's that you and I are not doing a Top Gear podcast. I don't love Top Gear. Certainly not the old Top Gear that you did. But, yeah, absolutely. It's like when I watched this, I thought, this is Top Gear. This is what this is. Not down to the fact that even the fact that the Mini Metro was launched yesterday. It's a bit of an advertisement piece. It's like, I can't believe this was allowed in Tomorrow's World. It's clearly a deal was done with British Leyland to, he even mentions the fact that it was launched yesterday. It would have been big news, apparently, I'm assuming that the Mini Metro was launched. Yeah. And here they are basically advertising how incredible it is and how much effort British Leyland have gone into ensuring it can live up to extreme conditions. Albeit, we'll talk about how limited, perhaps, British Leyland's efforts. Well, because it's been launched without the tests actually having been completed. No, they don't really care about Britain.
I think that so demonstrates such. It's. I'm trying to think of the words, but it's an attitude of almost disrespect for the British
disrespect
public.
was the word I would use. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, we can foist any old shit on the British.
You'll buy this crap.
But when we need to export it to foreign markets, we actually need to test it and make sure it works properly.
They actually have a choice. They may not buy this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Spoiler alert: they didn't. I have to say. I'm slightly biased in this segment in that I have always absolutely hated Mini Metros. I find it very difficult to think of a car I dislike more, especially those old ones like the one he's driving there. I think they're repellent little cars, and invariably the people that drive them are unpleasant as well. So I was immediately on the offensive as soon as I saw him tooling about in that thing. But I think it suits Rod quite well.
It does.
The car,
which probably says so much about what we think of him. I mean, we love him. Yeah, but I don't necessarily think we entirely respect him. Oh no, we respect him. We don't respect his presentation choices sometimes. I will say this: at times, this is beautifully shot. The opening image of this segment is the Mini Metro. So the second you say Mini Metro, whatever I'm going to say next is just blown out of the water. It's an image of the Mini Metro in the distance, driving along like a very long road or like a runway, much like the Top Gear studio, but with like the heat haze, just kind of making it look like he's the lone warrior kind of coming. Well, it is.
It's the opening sequence it's an opening sequence to Knight Rider.
Yeah,
That's basically what it is.
Yeah,
coming straight towards the camera.
Knight Rider, isn't it?
Oh, I might do. I don't know.
Is it,
Knight
like,
Rider car.
do you think Knight Rider,
maybe.
Knight
Do you think-
Rider
well,
must
maybe
have
not-
ripped this off?
Yeah, Knight Rider ripped this off. Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking it up, Russ, but I think this predates Knight Rider. 1982. There you go.
Oh,
Boom.
well, there we go. Yeah,
yeah.
case closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine if Kit was a mini Metro.
Mini Metro.
It was a beige mini Metro.
I'm not sure I would have loved it as much as a kid.
I'm not sure that the Hoff would fit in it anyway. He's a big fella.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he as tall as he is wide. Yeah, but it's if it was any other car, some of the shots would be really beautiful. But they're spoiled by the fact that the subject is a mini Metro.
And the other thing, obviously, I'm coming to this with a certain amount of knowledge.
Yes.
I know that mini Metros are absolute rot boxes as well.
Yeah, even I know that. And
like these tests. Well, they should have done these tests before they released the car for a start. But maybe then they wouldn't all have been so rotten. But I mean, most British Leyland cars at the time were all rotten because they were using, poor quality components and
they were just knocked out. They weren't tested.
Yeah.
They weren't. There was no quality control.
No,
because initially, this feels like a real kind of advertisement for the Mini Metro, which, as I say, was launched yesterday. Launched on the 8th of October 1980. Put that in your ledgers for upcoming pub quizzes, because I'm sure it'll be what a great pub quiz question that is. And initially, I thought it was about how it felt like it was a nod to the fact that British Leyland had a really tawdry reputation for quality control. And here was Rod to show you how British Leyland had course corrected and how they were really hammering the Mini Metro to make sure it was fit for purpose, but not just fit for purpose here in Britain. It was fit for extreme. And if they could make it last, if they could torture this Mini Metro and prove at the end that they had learned all the lessons, it would be a great car. And actually, you come to the opposite conclusion, which is that they still don't give a shit about quality control or testing.
Just total complacency.
They have launched it without finishing any of this.
No,
it's so odd. I'm assuming British Leyland didn't have a PR department, because how anyone would think that this is the message you want to be sending? Because it really seemed to come down to the conclusion that you're not to worry, because we're going to prove it's good enough for the rest of the world, but only after you buy it.
Yeah.
And once the rest of the world thinks it's okay, you reap all the benefits.
Once the French have complained enough about it, then we'll iron out all the wrinkles, and then it'll be a
Mark
reasonably
II is
good
going to be
car.
a real car.
Yeah.
So odd. It's such a so weird. And Michael Rod seems so proud of it as well.
Yeah, and the invention can't be the proving ground, because those car proving grounds have been around since the 60s.
Ignoring the fact that the piece seems to be about selling the Mini Metro, which I think it kind of is, really. I mean, that's where they came in. The Tomorrow's World subject is about the protection against specifically rust. So, water and the cold. And he explicitly talks about how it's designed to hold up in a Detroit winter, which I was not aware. I know Michigan gets cold. I do know that. I do know Michigan gets cold. So does Wisconsin and Illinois. Like all these places around the Great Lakes, they have frigid, difficult winters. I did not know that Detroit was famed for its particularly harsh weather conditions, and the fact that apparently cars in Detroit basically fall apart after a year, which to me seems like that's more of a statement about the failing of the American motor industry, which I don't think I need to remind people was based in Detroit. They were designing and building cars, apparently, that couldn't even hold up against the winter of the city they were designed and built in.
Yeah,
and yet the Mini Metro was going to absolutely nail this.
Imagine driving through Detroit in a Mini Metro. Jesus Christ.
I mean, like, you wouldn't be laughed out of town. Like, they would just, they couldn't see you, because, like, their eye level would be about a foot above the car, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Maybe it's just a statement about how heavily the Detroit Council salt their roads. Like, their roads are so salty that the cars just don't have a chance.
They're in the pocket of big salt, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Such a weird segment, this, isn't it?
I think it's got to come down to, it's just an advert for the Metro, isn't it?
It really is, actually. And it's not even a well disguised one. Like, it's just, like, it is a Tomorrow's World segment because it is about the science, but he uses big words. But ultimately, it's a puff piece for the Mini Metro of all the cars.
I've just realised, as soon as I said it's an advert for the Mini Metro, Mark, I've just remembered I was going to show you an advert for the Mini Metro.
You texted me and everything to prime me.
So people have a lot of explanations about the origins of Brexit, Mark, right?
Yes, they do.
Now I'm going to say that I think probably And this is yet another reason to hate the Mini Metro. I think the Mini Metro might be ground zero for the Brexit campaign. I think Nigel Farage saw this and based everything on it. So if you're listening at home, just go on YouTube and Google Metro adverts, a British car to beat the world. I'll plop in the audio, but it's worth watching the video as well. Here we go, Mark. Brace yourself.
Some of you may have noticed that for the past few years, Britain has been invaded by the Italians, the Germans, the Japanese, and the French. Now we have the means to fight back. The new Austin Metro. The new Metro is so aerodynamic that at a steady 50 miles per hour, the Metro HLE gets 62 miles per gallon. The new Metro has a split-action rear seat to let you choose between more space or more seats. And to help send the invaders back where they came from, the new Austin Metro goes 12,000 miles or 1 full year between services. The new Austin Metro, a British car to beat the world.
Wow, that's something, isn't it?
Jesus Christ. State of that, Mark.
That is disgraceful. I halfway through, I comedically saluted the ad, Russ, and then less than 2 seconds later, they had somebody literally saluting as the Metros went by. I feel tawdry as a result. That's awful. And the thing is, it's like, without getting too much into politics, it's like all this bluster and this promise and this kind of, because the whole thing is basically like the French and the German, the Japanese and the Italians, they're staging a D-Day landing. There's all these landing craft that arrive and they drop their fronts and out come these vehicles. And the whole thing is couched in a kind of a World War II fetish propaganda kind of thing. And the thing is like, but you're talking about the Mini Metro, you're talking about the Austin Metro, to be fair. It's like all this, the way they, one of the things that was done so well in recent years was whipping people up into a fervour, into a passion about an idea and a concept that could not deliver anything it promised whatsoever. Wow, I've never realised the parable, how comparable the Austin Metro and the promise of Brexit was.
And the thing is,
people just wanted better, and yet this is what was being foisted at them, and they were being. Oh wow, that's an astonishing ad.
Each of those, the French, Italian, German, and Japanese cars, are all better than the Mini Metro.
Like offensively better cars. Like the German one is a Golf. It's a Golf. Infamously an iconic car of quality and longevity, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Is it a Renault 5? I didn't spot what the Japanese.
It was a Renault 5. Yeah.
Italian cars were, but I know they were better because how could they be worse? Oh, and it's so aerodynamic. I didn't realise how aerodynamic the Austin Metro was. Oh, that's just pitiful, isn't it? I mean, and that's the thing that is so pitifully lazy. There is literally nothing about the car they can say. So instead, they're going to kind of appeal to some kind of fading patriotism.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's astonishing. No wonder you were so excited to show me that.
But that's Britain. That's Britain again in about 2 years' time, isn't it?
I mean, we're laughing now.
As I say, I keep slagging off the Mini Metro, but it is some more evidence of how shit they are, right? So it was a hugely popular car.
Yeah.
It's actually the 10th most popular car ever sold in Britain. It sold 1.5 million examples, right?
Wow. That's a lot.
In less than 20 years, right? Do you know how many are still on the road?
Oh, what a great question.
Out of 1.5 million.
So from 1980, can you tell me when they stopped selling them?
It was 1998.
18 years.
Obviously, various different.
No, that's what I mean. I'm trying to think.
Upgraded models, but all basically the same car.
So, and annoyingly, they you and I and probably people listening, 1998. That wasn't that long ago. They were sold for 18 years. That was 24 years ago. So it is longer since they stopped selling them than they were being sold. How many? I'm dragging this out. What I think. So 10% would be 100. There's no way it's 150,000. That'd be 10%. 30,000.
But there are 289, just 289
out of
left
1.5 million
on the roads.
Wow,
that is an extinction rate of 99.98%. That's how awful. They were one of Britain's most scrapped cars. In fact, one of the only uses for them is that those early ones, like the ones in that advert there, had exactly the same mechanicals as a Mini. So a lot of them, they just, in order to restore Minis,
they would take the top off and
just take the engine out and all that, and just put them in a Mini. So I mean, they've done a good job of keeping Minis on the road. Which bearing in mind that a Mini was like designed in the 50s. Yeah. They still managed to outlast the Metro by 2 years. The original Mini. They only stopped making them in the year 2000.
Amazing.
Despite their best efforts, the Europeans were not having them. They much rather have their cars. So they're only really sold in Britain. Oh yes, but Princess Diana. Yeah. Before she married Prince Charles, she was one of the first people to buy a Mini Metro. So there's lots of paparazzi shots of her tooling around in a Mini Metro as a 19-year-old. Obviously, I don't know whether that is why a Fiat Uno caused her caused her to crash her Mercedes subsequently. I don't know whether it's like revenge. It could be. Were those Fiat Unos on that boat in that advert? Maybe. I'm not sure. Didn't check. Anyway, in terms of like this testing cars business, the place to go is Millbrook Proving Ground. That's the one they all see it on. You all see it on Top Gear these days. Yeah. It's where they can test absolutely everything at Millbrook.
To destruction, as they always say.
Yes, yeah. It was built in the 1960s by GM, and it's actually based on their proving ground that they built in Michigan, which is called Milford Proving Ground. So I see what they did there. And originally they just tested Vauxhalls and Bedfords there, but then they sold it off, and now anybody can test their cars there, and that's what they all do. They all turn up and test their cars there. There's lots of security and secrecy, so you prying eyes can't see what they're testing. Yeah. But they can test absolutely everything. Got every road surface you can think of, including like Belgian cobbles and all that sort of thing. They do all the crash testing. They've even got a big robot with a big robot bum that just hammers the seats all day and all night to simulate somebody getting out of the car for the time. The only other interesting thing about Millbrook Proving Ground is that in Casino Royale, when he flips the Aston Martin flips and rolls for ages,
which is still that was longest, isn't it?
Yes, that was done on Millbrook Proving Ground. Yes, so that's Metros and Metro testing. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Oh, the only other thing, actually, no, there's one more thing I was going to point out. The two biggest selling cars in UK history, because when I was finding out how many Metros they'd sold, and it's the 10th biggest selling. The two biggest selling cars in British history are both Fords, the Ford Escort and the Ford Fiesta. Is it coincidence that Escort and Fiesta are also both the names of old
jazz mags?
Old jazz mags.
Oh wow! I want to say no, but
which came first
of the two mags? Or the person reading it, I assume. I don't know. What a great question. Yeah. If you know the answer, why didn't you email Tomorrow's World Order Time at gmail.com?
Whereas, of course, Metro is a crap-free newspaper.
Absolutely. Off the top of your head, how many Escorts and Fiestas? I mean,
about 4.5 million each, I think.
Gosh, that's so many, isn't it? That's a lot, isn't it? Wow, incredible. Well done, Ford.
And still plenty of them on the road as well, Mark.
Yes. Well, to be fair, they are still manufactured. Do they still make the Escorts?
No.
They still make Fiestas, though. But the thing is, I saw Fiestas. The weird thing is, because I really have no connection to cars these days. And my brother bought a new one recently. It's a really lovely car. And it made me look out, because I knew what he bought. So I will look out for them. And I started noticing Fiestas, because I'm actually not in cars very often. I don't drive. Yeah. And they're bloody huge. Like the size of a Sierra or something like that. When did that happen?
Yeah, car inflation's ridiculous. Yeah. Like the new Mini is the size of an old Land Rover. That makes no sense at all.
That does not make sense. No, they're absolute old cars. These are gigantic.
It's because people want to be protected from crashes these days. It's ridiculous.
Come on.
Health and safety gone mad.
Come on.
Health and safety gone mad.
Oh, they'll be wanting seatbelts next or something like that.
It's all right. Brexit Britain will roll back all those regulations.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
And they'll bring out the Metro
and the
again,
irony
and
is
everybody will be happy.
The metric martyrs will die horrific car crashes, but they'll be free.
Their coffins will be measured in inches.
Yeah, brilliant. How fabulous.
Right. Last one?
Yep.
This box is a training ground for the men of the Suffolk Fire Service. But fill it with smoke, and you can't see a thing. Firemen have got to work in conditions like that. Well, over here is something that could be a big help. It's a camera that sees through smoke. Watch this. The image of that bulb on the monitor there isn't being produced by the light from the bulb, but by the heat it's radiating. And by the way, what you can see is the whole bulb there, not just the filament. It gives a circular image, this camera. It's called thermal energy, and it's not just hot objects that put it out. Everything's got a temperature. And it's generally true that objects around room temperature radiate heat that can penetrate smoke and that this camera can pick up. Well, all right, thermal or infrared imaging isn't new, but ever since the technology was developed for industry and the military, fire brigades have been interested too. And this new lightweight camera is the first one specially developed for them. It's all based around a heat detector at the heart of the camera. And over here is that detector, a thin circular slice of material with the impossible name of triglycine sulfate. Barely trips off the tongue, that, doesn't it? But the really clever bit was placing that crystal inside the picture tube of an ordinary television camera. Well, this heat-detecting crystal simply replaces the light-detecting material, which is normally in this end. But because nothing is really simple in life, the crystal does something else. It only reacts to changes in temperature, and that's why we had to keep the light bulb flickering on and off. Well, if we keep the light bulb on now, hopefully we'll see that the image disappears completely. And there it's almost gone. And that's because the radiation from the bulb has been constant for the last few seconds. And because the detector only reacts to change in temperature, the picture dies away. Well, there is a way around that, because I can switch on a shutter inside of it, and it has much the same effect as me putting my hand in front of the lens and taking it away again. Obviously, my hand is blocking and unblocking the heat source. Well, let's turn it on and have a look. And back it comes. Still, we haven't yet seen how it really works in the conditions it was designed to cope with. Well, in that smoke-filled chamber are a number of objects that I'm supposed to find. So, thanks to the men of the Suffolk Fire Service, I'll put on a breathing apparatus. Thanks very much, gentlemen. Pick up my camera. And if you'll just step this way with me, we'll see what we can find.
Well, this invention is very important to me, Mark, because the third best film ever made is, of course, Predator.
Of course it is, yeah.
And without thermal imaging, how would the Predator,
I have to say, I did not realise...
You haven't got a film, have you?
No, I did not realise Predator was filmed by the Suffolk Fire Brigade. That is news to me. I did not know it was... I have to say, I did not realise it was filmed just outside Ipswich.
Oh, mate, yeah, dude, maybe if Arnie could have used one of those weed-clearing boats to help propel himself through the jungle.
Yes, absolutely. The Suffolk jungle.
This is another one of those ones where it's something that we're really used to, and we can't. I don't know whether we're seeing it for the first time, but it seems like it. He's explaining the principle of a thermal imaging camera, so it seems like it's not been brought up on the show before.
Seems to indicate that we might be familiar with the concept.
Mm.
But I think what is interesting here, or revolutionary, is that, I mean, this thermal... Yeah, because he mentions, obviously, that it's been used by the military and something else. The NASA? Space, maybe? I don't know. So definitely the military. And that fire brigades were definitely interested in the idea. So it's distinctly probable that Tomorrow's World have shown off the concept of thermal imagery. But what's interesting about this is that this object that he uses, which is the size of like a small microwave, is a real thing you can pick up and that fire brigades can actually use. And that's what's revolutionary. It's probably the first time you've seen it maybe in a unit that is out in real British streets, being driven around by mini metros.
Once again, they've relied on Kieran to end the show.
Yes.
With one of his demonstrations. He's a good demonstrator.
It's a good demonstration, yeah. He's really good at this.
Yeah. So he shows us the principles of how this thermo imaging camera works. And then this is very exciting bit where he gets tooled up.
Yeah.
With the fire brigade kit.
We should start, like, he's standing outside a metallic porta cabin. The kind of hut you might have had in your school. That one of those huts that every school seemed to have, where like it was temporarily put there to house the geography department, and it was still there 30 years later. It never went anywhere. Yeah, so it's one of those, but it's entirely metallic. There's no windows, and he opens the door. It is full of smoke.
But that can't be actual smoke, surely.
Well, not fire smoke, surely. It's you know,
Is it
kind
like
of
some sort of fake smoke?
yeah, like top of the pop smoke.
Yeah.
And so he's going to go in, and you know, I was kind of surprised. He gets tooled up. A couple of guys run out, and they are quick to put on the full kind of aqualung style oxygen tank and the full face mask. Very impressive. Like it's quick, and then immediately, like seconds later, he's barreling into the room.
Yeah, and this is the bit I found interesting. That room, when he goes in it, looks absolutely enormous. It
Huge,
looks like he's just walked. It just like he's walked into a stately home,
Yeah.
right? There's furniture in the distance.
Yeah.
Yet from the outside, this porter cabin looks about the size of a large caravan.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Well,
Does it just extend into the distance?
No, it's the lens and the camera.
Is it
It's
the-
kind of
do you
it's kind of like a fisheye lens. It's got a very large, it's a very low numbered lens, like, you know, I don't know, like a 12 or something like that. Yeah, so that
Right.
I think that's what it is.
There's not like TARDIS technology involved here. Then
No,
it's
it's not.
Borrowed it from the Doctor Who
But
department.
it is weird. Like it is like he enters in another. Well, he enters into one of Michael Rodd's impossible universes, where maybe a man has chosen to sit down instead of stand next to a chair, and you know,
Yeah.
and it's our mind expanding, Russ, that makes the room look bigger. That's what I'm positing.
But yeah, he spots a teapot.
Yeah, couple of cups.
Couple of cups, and then he manages to make. I don't know how he manages to make the mistake. He mistakes wine bottles for milk bottles. That's not something I don't think I would ever
No,
do.
not at all. They're very clearly wine bottles, and they are glowing bright white.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, as soon as I saw how brightly
Yes.
they were glowing, Mark,
I know.
I assumed that they were fresh from Raymond Baxter's cellar. That's how warm they looked.
His balmy cellar, the kind of cellar
Yeah.
where you could put a mini Metro to really test it against the elements. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then did he spot anything else? Oh no! Then there's another camera that
Yeah,
spots him.
yeah.
And we get a nice.
He's hoping there's another camera. You don't see it. He
Yes,
says,
no.
"Oh, you might be able to see this other camera." It's like, well, no, because it's not warm. It's in his housing. But then it cuts to him, and he's this kind of ghostly, spectral
Yeah.
figure that kind of reminded me of, is it Tales of the Unexpected, where there's that kind of, that woman kind of waving her arms around. That's how the show ends.
Yeah, and noticeably a toaster next to him as well. I don't really saw that.
No, I didn't see that. No, I didn't see the taste.
Yeah, there's a sideboard next to him, and there's clearly a toaster glowing next to him.
He didn't spot that, did he?
No, I was just wondering how much that cost.
And who makes it by any chance?
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we'll soon find out. So, well, infrared cameras, Mark. Well, infrared. It was discovered by a German-British astronomer. You may have heard of him, called William Herschel in 1800s. But it's that thing. Do you ever notice that thing where if you go a certain amount in the past, it doesn't matter where somebody was born. Like they're normally described as. So William Herschel was born in Germany and lived there until he was 19, and then moved to Britain. But everywhere he's described as either a British astronomer or a German British astronomer.
He discovered it in 1800, you say?
Yes, infrared.
But there was no Germany in 1800.
Oh, maybe that's why he chose to be
It was
British.
Prussia. You know what I mean? Like Germany didn't appear until much later.
Oh, maybe that's why then.
Yeah, no wonder he left. It's not a real country.
But so he discovered that infrared it's like super red that you can't see. That is what
It's like super red. Sorry, go ahead.
super red that you can't see
Yeah.
that causes heat.
Yeah.
But then somebody then came up with the idea of a thing called a thermopile. They worked out that if infrared hits a thermopile, it creates electricity, and if you use that, then you can work out the temperature of things. So they invented that, and over time they sort of made better and better versions of that. They got very good at it. By 1901, they had thermopiles that were so accurate they could detect the heat radiated by a cow from 400 meters away. In 1901.
That's incredible.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
That's an incredible example of any measurement of like a sophisticated piece of equipment. And 1901, that is astonishing.
Yeah. So anyway, skip forward a few years. And then this was amazing. This is another one of my little rabbit holes I went down. This Hungarian inventor bloke, who I'd never heard of, called Koloman Tihanyi. Turns out we owe him a huge debt of gratitude to do with TVs. So he was he basically came up with He didn't come up with cathode ray tubes, but he came up with the type of cathode ray tubes that we used in televisions. So he was the one that invented the imploding risk that we all worry about.
Wanted our child.
But yeah, but his design was he patented it. He patented it in like 1926, and even back then he made sure his patent covered like colour and all of this. He already thought of all of that, and those designs were then used by TV companies in America to actually build TVs. He soon moved on to other stuff, and he moved to Britain. Started working for the military, and in 1929 he invented a special type of camera that you could fit to aeroplanes, so you could remotely guide aeroplanes.
Wow.
So he invented the first drone, basically.
It's incredible. That's incredible.
And American drone companies were still using the principles that he designed right up until the mid-80s when computers took over. But up until then, it was all his ideas and stuff like that. He also, around this time, I think it's around 29 as well, he came up with the first night vision camera, which is why I'm talking about it. He came up with the first night vision camera, which the British used on their anti-aircraft guns to detect stuff. That was in 1929 as well. So the man's a genius. Yeah. The other thing about him, he also came up with the idea for flat screen plasma TVs. Right?
Okay.
I guess, right? In 1936.
Amazing.
He didn't have the technology to like fully do it, but he had the whole idea. He just said,
"Isn't that around the time when?" No, actually, I was about to say the BBC centenary is this year. Is it?
Not much. Yeah, exactly.
But like 1930 something was when they started broadcasting on like the mechanical, the Logie Baird mechanical television, and yet he had already come up with the idea of
He'd already thought of flat screen plasma TVs. Yeah.
Wow, incredible.
But he just had to wait for he's one of these people that he thought so far ahead that he had to wait for technology to catch him up. But anyway, he's the first person to come up with a night vision camera anyway. Roll forward a few more years, in the 50s, mid-50s or mid-60s, the British were trying to invent a way of looking for submarines. And they thought if they could see the heat signature of when the submarine surfaces and its wake, then they'd be able to spot them.
Yeah.
So they invented this thing called the yellow duckling, but it didn't work. But it did work. They realised, we could use this as a night vision camera, though. So that's what they then changed its use, basically. That was the first modern sort of version of it, and that worked on the same principles that all the subsequent ones did. So all military ones were based on that from then on. So the problem is that you can't use glass lenses in, as I think maybe Kieran pointed out in this piece, you can't use a glass lens on an infrared camera because glass stops infrared rays. So you have to come up with special lenses for them, and that was the difficulty. So they had to come up with different special substances that made them really expensive. That's the kind of thing that hindered their development for a bit. But obviously now, we live in the future, they're all over the place. Actually, can you get them on phones these days? I wouldn't be surprised if you could get one on a phone these days.
I was thinking that. I'm not aware of one, but like probably because it's not really...
Maybe you'd have to have a separate lens for it, so it probably isn't worth it, is it? Weirdly, taking us all the way back to the beginning, there's two types of thermoimaging cameras you can get. You can get normal everyday ones, which are quite inaccurate, and they're uncooled. Or you can get super accurate ones that they use for experiments and things like that. And they have to be all the components have to be cooled right down. And so, do you know what they put them in, Mark? They put those components in.
Do they put them in thermos flasks? Cool?
They put them in thermos flasks. Yay!
The circle is complete.
Yes, yeah, and obviously infinite uses for a night vision camera. I mean, not just weird pervy ones. There's like building inspections, looking for cannabis farms, seeing if people have got COVID when they're walking through an airport.
Yeah, or
archaeology.
Or seeing Jez Nelson in his noisy sleeping
trying
bag
to spot
suit.
trying to spot Jez Nelson in a sleeping bag.
Yep.
Apparently in cricket they use it because
they do
the hotspot system
to see if the ball has clipped the edge of the bat. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, some cars have it fitted so you can see at night. Evil farmers, they use them to apparently if you shine it at a cow and its hooves are hot
from as far away as 400 meters, I hear. Oh, its hooves are hot. yeah.
If its hooves are hot, it's bad news. It means the cow's ill for some reason. Hot hooves
bad
at
news. Night. Farmers delight is what I've heard. Oh, hot hooves, bad news. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And of course, Kate Humble's badger baiting requires some sort of night vision cameras as well, doesn't it? So yeah. But so thermal imaging camera, another cracking success story.
And this is very well explained, because one of the things I like about this is, hopefully it comes across in the audio, is that the limitations of the equipment at the time are that it spots changes in heat, not heat itself. And so I love the fact that initially they're showing that because they have this blinking light, like it's going on, it's going off, and you can see when the images relay to us that we're seeing the heat source kind of pulsate. And I love the fact that he then explains that they have this little kind of, it almost felt like mechanical television again, where there's this, you clearly get the sense that this spinning wheel just ahead of the lens that is turning, so that the light or the heat is exposed to the sensor sporadically, which I thought was just a really smart, simple way of making this work and making it useful. I just thought that was so clever. I enjoyed that more almost than the rest of it, because I thought that, there's a limitation, but here's this really simple, effective way we've designed of making it work regardless, or leaning into the problem and making it work for us. I like that. I thought that was a nice bit to the segment.
Yeah. I thought actually Prendiville's quite light on the gags this episode, isn't it?
He tries a couple of times. He tries a wee bit hard, but no, there's nothing. But ultimately, it's quite a serious bit. I mean,
I think the closest to a gag is when he first opens the door.
Yes.
He just goes, "Firemen have to work in conditions like that."
Yeah, it's like, all right, that sort of thing. Kieran, didn't work for me. I didn't like it. But I suppose maybe because it's a relatively serious bit, isn't it? It's not like the last episode where he's in a William Tell situation, or he's doing the hilarious bank teller worktop firing piston nonsense thing. Like, maybe he respects the Suffolk Fire Brigade too much. As he should, to be fair. That's the thing. Is like the two guys who come on to suit him up. They're in their proper kind of
proper old school, aren't they?
Uniforms, and they look kind of old. It's like
they would never pose for one of those fireman hunk calendars, would they?
I mean, they can certainly pose. No one's going to buy it. No one's going to stop them, Russ. That's not the issue. There's just no audience for it. But I mean, to be fair to them, it's like they were brave back then. But no, he's not the flippant Prendiville we've all been promised.
Do you think the Suffolk Fire Brigade call that room full of smoke that they've got there? Do you think they call it the suffocator?
If they don't, they should.
Just occurred to me.
That's very good. Yeah, no, I like that. That was a good bit. You're right to broadcast it to the world, Russ. No, that was good. That's good punmanship.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
I admire that.
So, until the same time next week. Good night.
So, 1980, a year I don't know very well, but possibly. I mean, let's be honest. Let's get down to brass tacks here. This is one of the two most important days in the history of this very podcast, Russ. So, can you tell us about 1980?
Yeah. You've got a decent box office, Mark, I've got to say.
Oh, I'm excited. I wonder if I've seen it. I must have done. Anyway, go on. Do tell.
It's only a top 7 for some reason or other. Number 7 is Cruising, which I've never seen.
Oh, yeah.
So, William Friedkin film with Al Pacino in it. Number 6 is Xanadu.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen Xanadu, but I'm aware of it.
Named after our favourite nightclub.
In Nottingham.
Nottingham nightclub. Love.
Yeah, she did a number as that woman, didn't she? Getting us to go in there.
Number 5, Caddyshack.
God, brilliant.
Number 4, Urban Cowboy, the John Travolta film.
Yes.
I've never seen that. Is it anything like Midnight Cowboy?
I don't think so. I don't think it's not as celebrated or as good.
The tagline on the poster is, I think it says "Hard Hot Days and Honky Tonk Nights."
Oh wow, okay.
Think about it, right, John Travolta. I don't know if I mentioned this before. Don't think I mentioned this before. I might have done.
It's not come up.
Don't you think it's weird? John Travolta, his first 2 films that made him famous. Like in Grease, he's singing and dancing. In Saturday Night Fever, he's dancing. And yet subsequently, he never did any films where he sang or danced, apart from, he does a dance bit in Pulp Fiction. That's when he's come back, though. But why did he not just do loads of
I don't know. It's a good
singing
question.
and dancing films? Because he was good at it.
Yeah, like famously, he's quite good. That's a really good question. I have no idea. He didn't really do any musicals, did he? Or
no.
I don't know. I kind of assume, because obviously, maybe he just wanted to be, quote unquote, a serious actor. I don't know. Good question. If you know the answer, email tomorrowsworldallthetime@gmail.com.
If you work for the Church of Scientology.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we have listeners in East Grinstead. They can tell us. We can help clear your, what the hell are they called?
Zebus?
No. Xenu is the guy who's in charge in the past, but they have Thetans. We'll help clear your Thetans if you can tell us why John Travolta didn't do any more song and dance numbers in films.
Imagine if there was like a big religious war between like all of the weirdo cults, like the Mormons against the Scientologists, against the what those ones we've read about the other day, the Raelians.
The Raelians, yeah. I think it's almost unfair to
like an intergalactic war, but waged on Earth.
Oh well, I mean, if it's an intergalactic war, then it's going to be the guys who still have their website up, despite the fact that they all committed suicide in the 90s.
I don't know what they're called.
No, I can't remember either. Here's the thing.
Who's paying for
there's actually
for their web hosting?
Great question. There's money in the banana stand. I think. Well, here's the thing. Scientology clearly has the money, but Mormons also have money, and actually, they genuinely do have numbers.
Yeah, it's true.
But let's be honest. If it's going to be a fight between smaller religions, my money's on the Salvation Army, Russ. They have the kind of discipline that can bring. Yeah, exactly. They've got the discipline and the training to see it through to the end.
All that second-hand equipment as well they've got in there through their network of charity shops.
That's very true.
Anyway, right. Number 3,
Yep.
All That Jazz.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. That's good.
Here we go. And Mark, it's a late entry, but I'm sure you'll be glad to see it. Number 2, The Shining.
Ah!
Stanley Kubrick.
Brilliant. Thank God for that. Jeez, it's been weeks since we've talked about Stanley Kubrick.
Number 1, The Blues Brothers.
Oh, that is a good top 2, isn't it? All right, cool. All right, yeah, I'm pleased with that. Pop chart? I mean, I know what was number 1, but go on. Do tell us what the pop chart is.
Do you know what was number 1?
Yeah, is it Don't Stand So Close to Me by the Police?
Right.
Yeah.
Number 10, Killer on the Loose by Thin Lizzy.
Oh, Irish.
Number 9, Amigo by Black Slate.
I've never heard of that.
No. Number 8, One Day I'll Fly Away by Randy Crawford.
Okay.
Number 7, If You're Looking for a Way Out by Odyssey. Number 6, Stereotype / International Jet Set by The Specials. Number 5, My Old Piano by Diana Ross. I've got to say, My Old Piano sounds like a Chaz and Dave song more than a Diana Ross song, doesn't it?
I was quite taken aback when you said Diana Ross.
Here we go. This is it. Number 4, Master Blaster, Jamming by Stevie Wonder.
That's good. Yeah, pleased with that.
Number 3, Reggae Trousers by Madness.
Oh, pleased with that.
Number 2, DISCO, Ottawa. Yeah. And as you say, number 1, Don't Stand So Close to Me by The Police.
Yeah, the Police.
A anthem for the COVID era.
Yeah, very true. And how about prices, Russ?
Right. Gallon of petrol, £1.28. The problem is gallons. This is, as I said previously, the old website's not working, so we're going to have to resort to gallons of petrol from now on. So anybody who's making, any notes or charts of this at home, please pay attention to the not comparable.
Well, just do the maths for us.
Well, I don't know how much a gallon is in litres.
Well, it's more like how many litres in a gallon, and then just, subdivide the price.
Don't know. I know there's 8 pints in a gallon.
Oh, no, not you. The people at home, Ross. You carry on with gallons. I don't. No.
Oh, yeah. They could probably just create a formula in their Excel spreadsheet.
There you go. Yeah.
It automatically converts it, I would have thought. They could just do that, yeah. So anyway, £1.28. What else should we have a look at? A Watley's Party 7.
Oh, is that why that was on the tip of your tongue?
£2.35. I don't know how big a
Watley's is. I'm sorry, that is my obvious question, is how big is a Watley's Party 7? It's got to be 2 or 3 pints?
7 pints?
I suppose that doesn't make sense. That's a big thing, isn't it?
Copy of the Daily Mirror, between 9 and 12 pence. Must have had a pay rise. Pay. That's 30 to 40 pence here. Here we go. House price.
Yeah.
£23,500, which is £80,000 these days.
I'm assuming that must be the UK average rather than London. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Packet of Smith's Crisps.
Oh, yeah.
17.5 pence.
Seems quite pricey.
That's 60p by modern standards.
Yeah.
Can of Coke, 16 pence.
Yes.
They don't have pint of milk here, I'm afraid, weirdly.
It's all right. Did you look at the Argos catalogue?
Of course I did, Mark.
And?
Well, do you know what the most expensive one in the Argos catalogue is, Mark?
Is it a Russell Hobbs?
Of course it is, Mark. It is a Russell Hobbs, yeah. It is the Russell Hobbs 3636 Futura automatic kettle, spout filling with water level indicator, cannot be switched on unless there is sufficient water covering the element, switches off when boiled, safety cutout, 2,400 watts, capacity 3.5 pints, £23.99.
Crikey. So what's that? 70 quid?
At least.
Wow, that is something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it white plastic, or is there any metal on there? I mean, describe it to me.
It's shiny.
It's okay, all right, great. Brilliant. Well,
It's a shiny, silvery one.
that's 1980. Thank God we know what the most expensive Russell Hobbs kettle is in the Argos catalogue that year. But that's not why we're here, Russ. So let's start with the first question, like we always do. Most important invention.
Most important invention. Oh, it's got to be the thermal imaging camera, isn't it?
It has to, doesn't it, actually? In terms of an actual invention, like it's going to save lives. You can't really get more important than that. And yeah, happy with that one. Most worthless invention?
The Mini Metro?
I didn't even think of that. I think you're right, Russ. Certainly the mini Metro proving ground, if not the Mini Metro itself. Oh yeah, I'm happy with that one. I think we can quickly write that off. Most inaccurate prediction of the future.
Well,
we don't live in a bubble universe that we're aware of.
I mean, yeah, I mean that's all theoretical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Neutrinos don't weigh that amount that the Russians said, though.
Yeah.
That's an inaccurate one. In fact, Royal Rig didn't get righted for 3 years rather than
I mean,
imminently, like Han said it was going to.
Yeah, I mean, she really did imply that it was days or weeks away, which slightly frustrated me because my feeling was, well, why not wait until a few weeks' time and then film it? Because like the footage of it being righted would be impressive. No, so that took another 3 years, didn't it? I mean,
Mini Metro didn't sell anything abroad.
Oh, you know, I'm tempted to go with that as well, Russ. Let's just shit in the Mini Metro for the next 10 minutes, eh? I am sorely tempted. I mean, to me, it's that and the fact that we don't live in a bubble universe. So let's go with the Mini Metro because, like, the only way the BBC have of pretending it's not an advert was to imply that somehow it's preparing for like an assault on foreign markets, and of course that literally doesn't happen.
I mean, literally in that advert, they have like D-Day style landing craft, don't they?
They do, yeah, totally.
Yeah, you know, people picture in their minds the landing craft of metros just arriving on the shores of Normandy,
and the French just like standing there, just like rolling their eyes, thinking, "What the hell is happening?" Worst screw up by a presenter.
I don't know whether it was Rod's fault, but he does come in halfway through a sentence. I'm not sure it's his fault though.
No, I don't think it's his fault.
What about Han smiling through the oil rig chat?
Did not make me happy. And we're big solid Han fans here because in general she threads the needle well. The only
fan 3000.
The only thing I was thinking is that I'm still moderately convinced that in the Fen clearance segment that Kieran says beneath the water the serrated teats rather than teeth. But I'm not so convinced that I'm willing to die in a ditch. So, God.
But I think that's surely just his Irish accent coming through temporarily, isn't it?
Maybe it is. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't do that, but then I've lived here a long time. Okay, fair enough. So then it has to be Han, doesn't it? Han's kind of...
Poor handling of the subject.
There we go. Oh, is that the title of the episode already?
No. The title of the episode is Roddimus Prime, clearly.
Oh, of course it is. Godoy. Best attempt at making something boring interesting?
I think I found the most interesting thing was the neutrinos thing, but I actually found that subject interesting anyway.
That's the thing.
It wasn't boring.
It's not boring. It's interesting.
It wasn't boring in the first place. The only really boring actually, maybe Sue chucking those thermoses into the cement mixer.
That's a great shout because I think the most boring segment is the Fen clearance segment.
Yeah,
but I think that answers our next question, which is the best, or one of our next questions, which is the best use of music. I think you're right. The way Sue chucks those flasks into the cement mixer was real glee. And actually, and also, the way they reveal the cement mixer.
I was about to say, they keep the cement mixer off camera.
Absolutely.
So you have no knowledge that it's there.
I was delighted. I gave a little whoop of joy.
Yeah.
Not least knowing that we were about to tick a box off, real early doors. No, I think you're right. I think that's a great job. And even just even the way she just enjoys the coffee at the end is really lovely. Yeah. No, that's a great shout. Best use of music. Well, it's got to be. It has to be the jazz music.
There is some sort of music in the Metro piece, but it's barely noticeable. And I mean, if they were going to use a piece of music, they should use Knight Rider music.
Which didn't exist at that point, but I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Although I did find out recently the Knight Rider music is a rip-off of an actual other piece of music.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's exciting. So they could have used
that if they somehow psychic. Yeah.
So they were somehow psychic. Best or worst use of furniture. And of course, to me, it has to be the Michael Plicity use of the office chair, where he is literally sitting in it as another Michael leans on it and touches it. So it's not like a split screen. Like it's that use of it must be like I'm assuming it must be a very early version of where like you basically double expose. You film the same thing twice and then overlap them, which seems quite cutting edge.
It must be a truly incredible chair, considering given all of the possibilities of the multiverse.
Of course.
Rod has decided in one of those possibilities
that is the fulcrum on which realities absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, it might be the greatest chair of all time. You're right, Russ. Maybe that might be the rolling answer for every time we ask this question. Did we see anything in the episode that made it through to the future? I think the answer is a very strong yes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Mini Metro made it through.
Yeah, well, I mean, only 298 of them have made it through to 2022.
To now, but to be fair, to Rod, they were being made for another 18 years after this episode.
Yeah.
Which is astonishing.
The thermos flask, absolutely. Yep. As I said, you can buy them in the shop. The thermal imaging, clearly.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
there's plenty.
The weed chopper.
Yeah, or the water warrior.
Water warrior.
Yeah. And the Fens have made it through, despite this climate emergency we're in. What does this episode tell us about the 9th of October 1980?
It's still the 70s.
Yes.
Much like it was from my episode.
Yeah.
It seems much more cheerful than in 3 months' time.
It does, doesn't it? I found that absolutely fascinating. Something happens in the next 3 months, or the next 2 and a bit months, in the universe of Tomorrow's World to suck all the joy and glee from Michael Rod and turn him into the misery guts we first met back in episode 1. And I can't wait to find out. I don't know what happens in the Christmas special this year, but yeah, it's a much more fun and ambitious program than the one, because actually the weird thing about your episode was like everything felt kind of domestic, didn't it? There was nothing kind of ambitious, or there was no real promise of a future. No. Where in this one there is. This is so much more like other episodes we've seen than that one on your birthday or the day after your birthday, whenever it is. Like that increasingly seems like a weird anomaly. I don't know what happened, but I really want to find out.
Maybe it's because we were both born, and somehow Michael Rod felt it.
He felt it.
He felt vibrations in the universe.
Oh no, I'm going to be judged now.
in 40 years' time.
Oh wow!
To these two babies that had just been born, we're going to come back and take the piss out of him
and coat me down. Yeah.
Put a wreck in the faces.
Wow, God. Oh, I hope it's not true, but at the moment I can't think of a better theory, so that must be it then. This is just a much happier, jollier program, isn't it? And even the fact that, like, one of the things that really struck us about the episode from 1981 was there was no set. It was just either a black void or a white void. And this time around, Su Ingle obviously is in the white void at the beginning, but it's lit differently and it's lit better. And, you can see the edge of the set, but like it's actually quite nicely, the white void isn't just this kind of empty space. There's a kind of sense of depth to it. And as I said, it almost feels like she's standing in front of the very opening milliseconds of a nuclear explosion, which not a great thing, to be fair, but just looks more visually interesting than it does 3 months hence, or 2.5 months hence. Dude, it's very odd, isn't it? It's such a weird thing watching this and knowing where it's going to end up.
Totally.
Let's look at the Tomorrow's World tropes then. So, presenter having to speak over louder sounds, I think that's a 100% yes.
Absolutely,
down to the fact that she actually uses a separate microphone to talk over it, which I liked a lot. Sleeves don't match Maggie Philbin's body. Maggie Philbin in inverted commas. I don't think there's anything like that, is there? Unfortunately.
No.
One day we'll hit everything. Stanley Kubrick reference? I'm going to go with no, unfortunately, Russ.
No.
Unless you can think of something.
It's like The Shining riding high at number 2 in the box office charts.
That's a Stanley Kubrick coincidence. Something to do with Ulrichs?
Oh.
Tick, tick, boom. Oh, no.
Can you get big ticks?
I'll give the biggest tick I can, which looks suspiciously the same size as other ticks. Suspiciously obvious brand name on the ad free BBC. This is actually the worst episode we've seen, isn't
Disgusting.
it? So
Disgusting.
we see Heinz spaghetti hoops, we see Heinz baked beans. It looks like, I think, containers of quality street sweets.
7 C's, some sort of 7 C's, like cod liver oil tablets or something like that.
Absolutely. We find out the name of the paddle boat thing is the Water Warrior. She, Judith Hann describes the upturned feet of the collapsed oil rig as looking like Smarties, which is absolutely a product. Mini Metro. I mean,
this is just a Metro advert.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually is the worst. I mean, we joked about Fila.
Shocking.
But that felt...
Eyes off the ball.
Or very much on their back pocket, I fear.
No wonder they're in such a good mood. They've all just been absolutely,
that's Christmas
filled with bumps.
Yeah. Clear and blatant lying.
Well, yeah, Rod's Rod claiming that the weight of a neutrino was 0.00.
Is he lying though, or is it just wrong? And it's going to be, I mean, like the Moscow Institute of Philosophical Physics or whatever. They're wrong. I don't know if Rod's lying, but I do think Rod's lying when he talks of the mini Metro. Yeah,
totally.
Because it's not good. Evil farmers? There's no evil farmers that I can recall.
No, I don't think so. No.
Casual sexism? I didn't notice anything. I didn't spot anything, except Su Ingle being a reporter.
I could say Su Ingle's lower pay grade.
It has to be it, doesn't it? Yeah, do you know, I'm not going to disagree with you on that one. Lab or space filled with darkness and coloured lights? There's nothing like that, is there?
No, far too far in the past for that sort of malarkey.
But we do get our first Dutch angle, or our earliest Dutch angle, I think. We have an extreme Dutch angle as the mini Metro courses around the track in
to
Birmingham.
try and add some sort of sense of dynamism.
Some kind of... And as a result, it's almost a 45-degree angle, the Dutch angle, which is not really what it's supposed to be. Does the episode end in a damp squib? No, I don't think it does.
No, not at all. That's a great little ending, that one.
Yeah, and neither Woolard or McCann are abroad.
No one's abroad, are they?
No.
Or unless you count the...
Well, no presenters
oil fields abroad.
The cameraman's abroad, but there's no presenter there. It's very much Judith Hann talking over a VT. So it's relatively light on the tropes. But that's it. That's that episode put to bed. I mean, we've given it more consideration than anyone's given it. So well done us, everyone.
Oh, lovely stuff. Well, Mark, I've been considering a career change after watching this episode. Ooh. Rod has inspired me. I've basically there's two I'm thinking about doing. Obviously, if the multiverse does exist, I'll be doing both of them simultaneously. So it's a toss-up as to which I'll end up doing.
Yeah.
Which do you reckon I think I'll be better at?
You, Russell, would be better at. Yeah. Yes.
Striptease artist or murderer?
I'm sure you can take off your clothes really well, Russ. That's the question. Isn't whether you can take your clothes off, is who wants to see you take your clothes off. I think you'd be a much better murderer.
Murderer?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll get myself one of those, what are they called, weekend warriors? No.
Water warriors.
Right, get myself a water warrior.
Yeah. For those low-speed canal chases that the Netherlands is famed for.
Start chugging down the canals, murdering people.
Oh, brilliant.
That's what I'll start doing for next week. Hand in my notice tomorrow morning.
# life goal. Love it.
Yeah. But I'll still keep doing the podcast, obviously.
Oh, please do.
Because we love doing this. And also, Father Christmas spent a lot of money on these microphones. So
we have to use them at least twice.
So, until next time, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Mark. And we will see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Planets.
What's the matter, Batman?
It's rush hour Gotham City and the Batmobile is big.
You mean...
Yes, Robin, the Metro.
Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. You weren't kidding about the traffic, Batman.
Yep, luckily we've got the Metro.
This little flyer sure is great for these city streets, Batman.
And we're gonna make it to City Hall in plenty of time. Curses, Batman! Got your penguin!
When you've got to pick up a penguin, Metro gets you going.